Chapter 2489. The Visit, 3. Leng Ruoxue expressed her gratitude to the innkeeper and took out some food for him to try. She then sent the innkeeper off, who was in a good mood. Even when he went downstairs, the shopkeeper was still thinking in his heart, as expected of someone from the divine realm, look at how good he is. The shopkeeper was in a good mood, but after receiving a message that seemed to be urging and provoking him, the 9 capital cities' city lord's face darkened again. This time, he was even angrier than before. Sitting in his own study room in the city lord's mansion, the 9 capital city lord cursed at the top of his voice, "Damned God! It was really too detestable. This was preposterous. This time, don't stop me. I'm going to take some people and teach them a good lesson. I want them to know whose territory they are on." In the face of the 9 capital city lord's angry words, the beautiful woman sitting not far away only calmly sipped her tea, not paying any attention to the 9 capital city lord's anger. After an unknown amount of time, seeing that no one agreed with his anger, the 9 capital city lord became dispirited and said dejectedly, "Ruji, you should give a reaction." "City lord, were your words just now directed at me?" Ruji blinked her eyes and looked at the 9 capital city lord with a puzzled face. "There's only the 2 of us here. If I'm not talking to you, who else could I be talking to?" The 9 capital city lord said gloomily. "I thought you were talking to yourself, but it seems that Ruji has misunderstood." Ruji said with a gentle smile. When the 9 capital city lord heard this, he couldn't describe the depression in his heart with words. However, at this moment, he really needed Ruji's advice, so he didn't dare to annoy her. Otherwise, if this petty woman decided to quit in a fit of anger, who could he find to find a solution? With this thought in mind, the 9 capital city lord's tone softened and he said softly, "Ruji, I've come to provoke you again. Do you want me to endure this time? City lord, if you can't bear it anymore, there's no need to bear it. However, if there are any consequences, city lord should be mentally prepared." Ruji smiled. "Ah." The 9 capital city lord was listless. He was afraid that Ruji would say this. "Castellan, the situation isn't clear yet, and our 9 capital city isn't very powerful. If you do something irredeemable in a moment of impulse, I believe that even the Castellan of Jihua City can't help you." By the way, did the Jihua City lord reply to the Castellan? Ruji saw the pitiful expression on the 9 capital city lord's face and subconsciously softened her voice. "Jihua City. But it'll continue to endure." Remembering that there was still no news from Jihua City, the mayor of 9 capital city had to suppress his anger. If Ruji isn't wrong, the lord of Jihua City is also in a dilemma. Ruji saw that the 9 capital city lord was so unwilling and could only say, "How is this possible? Jihua City is one of the top 10 main cities, and except for Juyo City, the city lord of Jihua City can do whatever he wants in 9 Nether Prison." The 9 capital city lord said with a face of disbelief. He felt that Ruji's words had boosted his morale and diminished his own. "Castellan, Juyo Nether Prison belongs to the Dark Lord. Although Jihua City is one of the top 10 main cities, it doesn't dare to challenge Juyo City. Juyo City hasn't made any response yet. Do you think the Castellan of Jihua City dares to act on his own?" Ruji laughed contemptuously. She couldn't help but sneer in her heart. The so-called 10 major cities, city lords were just dogs raised by the mistress of the dark world. If she wanted them to die, she could just say the word. Only the city lords of small cities like 9 capital city would take the 10 major cities seriously. How pathetic! In order to survive, Ruji had actually fallen to the point where she had to give herself to a timid man. But fortunately, this man listened to her every word. Just this point alone made her very satisfied. After hearing Ruji's words, the 9 capital city lord became more and more lost. Seeing him like this, Ruji sighed helplessly. "City lord, if you believe that I won't harm you, then you should listen to me." "Ruji, of course I believe you. I know you're doing this for my own good." When the 9 capital city lord heard this, he immediately expressed his heartfelt feelings. "It's good that you understand. City lord, I know you're angry, but in this situation, you must be able to control yourself and not be incited by others, understand?" Roji reminded him worriedly. I know I'll be careful. But Ruji, are we really not going to do anything? I mean, we should at least show our attitude, right? Otherwise, my dignity as the city lord will be swept to the ground. Although the 9 capital city lord had agreed to Ruji's request, he was still a little unwilling. However, he was also afraid that he would make Ruji unhappy, so he was quite hesitant and uncertain when he spoke. Thanks, Ruji nodded to show her understanding. City Lord, why don't you make a statement in the name of the City Lord's mansion? As the City Lord, you should stand on the side of justice. Therefore, you can't blame the guests who came from the divine world for this matter. Not only that, you should also apologize to them on behalf of the City Lord mansion to show our friendship. It can't be. When the 9 capital city lord heard this, his mouth was wide open in disbelief, and he was unable to come back to his senses for a long time. What did he just hear? It was already annoying enough for him to explain that his son had brought this upon himself, so why did he have to apologize to those gods? Damn it, if he wasn't sure that Ruji was a native, he would have thought that this woman was a spy sent by the divine realm to 9 Nether prison. This was too much bullying, wasn't it? But the city master still gave Ruji face. If it was someone else who said this, he would have ordered them to be put in jail. But he couldn't bear to do it with Ruji. After he finally came back to his senses, the 9 capital city lord looked at Ruji with a meaningful gaze. However, he was facing his beloved woman, so he could still hold back his anger. City Lord, you just need to know that I'm doing this for your own good, said Roji with a light smile. All right then. The 9 capital city lord compromised. All these years, Ruji's ideas had benefited him a lot. Otherwise, he wouldn't have trusted her so much. Roji personally watched as the city lord finished writing a notice from the city lord mansion. She then sent her confidant to post the notice. After that, she smiled at the city lord and said, City Lord, I've decided to go to the inn to meet those deities. Do you want to come with me? What? You still want to see them? The 9 capital city lord became even more depressed when he heard this. After writing the announcement, he felt even more aggrieved and depressed. If he went to see them personally, he was really afraid that he would not be able to control his anger and directly attack. City Lord, the announcement has already been made. If we go to the inn in person, then the people of the 9 capital city will believe that we really don't blame those gods. Ruji said as a matter of course. And then? What if I can't control myself and start fighting with them? The 9 capital city lord asked. City Lord, if you can't even control your own temper, then I suggest that you don't be the city lord anymore. It's better to give up this position to someone else as soon as possible to avoid getting into trouble. Roji suggested casually as if she was talking about someone else's business. Ruji, you've really gone too far. Aren't you afraid that I'll punish you in a fit of anger by saying such things about me? Sure enough, the 9 capital city lord was furious. He glared at the beautiful woman in front of him with a pair of eyes that were spitting fire. This time he was really angry. A man's greatest fear was to be regarded as useless by his woman. And Ruji had definitely touched his reverse scale. This was an insult to him. Unfortunately, his furious tone didn't scare Ruji. She still looked calm and said indifferently, Ruji is telling the truth for the good of the city lord. If the city lord doesn't want to hear the truth, feel free to throw me into the prison. This nonchalant tone instantly made the 9 capital city lord's face fall. In the end, it was the 9 capital city lord who lowered his posture and fawned, I know Ruji is doing this for my own good, hee. I'm just joking with you. I don't like to hear the truth from others, but I have to listen to you, Ruji. Then do you want to come with me to the inn to meet those gods? Ruji raised her eyebrows and asked. Go, I'll go with you. I'd like to see what kind of beauty caused my incompetent son to be in trouble. The 9 capital city lord said through gritted teeth. After knowing the truth, he had been interested in the beauty his son was talking about. However, Ruji kept a close watch on him, so he didn't have the chance to see the beauty. This time, he could take the opportunity to see her. City Lord, this time we're going to the inn to show the City Lord's mansion's attitude, not to see a beauty. So, you'd better not be like your lecherous son, who wants to snatch a beauty back after seeing her. Otherwise, if you really cause trouble, don't blame me for standing by and watching. Roji glanced at the 9 capital city master, her attitude suddenly turning cold. With that, she immediately turned and walked out of the study room of the 9 capital city lord. When the 9 capital city lord saw this, he hurriedly chased after him. At the same time, he was extremely vexed. What a mistake! How could he face another woman's curiosity as a woman? This was definitely a great taboo. With this thought in mind, the 9 capital city lord kept apologizing to Ruji on the way to the inn and did everything he could to please her. Very quickly, the two of them and a few of their subordinates arrived at the inn where Lung Ruoxue and the others were staying. Chapter 2490. Who is he? 1. The innkeeper, who was still doing the accounts, looked up and saw the people walking into his shop. His eyes instantly widened. It's here. It's here. The city lord is here. And he even brought his most beloved Madame Ro. For a moment, the inn manager did not know how to react. Were these people here to cause trouble? However, didn't he bring a little too few people with him to cause trouble? One had to know that the other party was extremely vicious. Just the people that the city lord had brought were probably not enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. At this moment, he didn't know if he should sympathize with the city lord and the others, or be envious and jealous of Lung Ruoxue and the others' good luck. Did this city lord think that the other party was too simple? Did he think that as long as he revealed his identity as the city lord, the other party would bow his head and listen to his orders? The inn manager stood behind the front desk and kept fantasizing, so much so that he forgot to greet the 9 capital city lord. The 9 capital city lord stood in the corridor for a long time, but when he saw that the inn manager was still in a daze and ignored their existence, he couldn't help but be a little angry. Shopkeeper, do you think we don't exist? The 9 capital city lord roared in anger. Arg. I'm sorry, city lord, I was thinking about something, and I was a little lost in thought. I've been too slow. Please forgive me, city lord. After being yelled at by the 9 capital city lord, the shopkeeper immediately came back to his senses and kept apologizing. His little heart also couldn't help but tremble. So, could he be blamed for this? It was the city lord and the others who came too suddenly. He didn't receive any news at all before, so why did the city lord come to the inn? At this time, the city lord's mansion's notice had just been posted, so the shopkeeper had not received the news yet. Otherwise, he would be even more surprised. Hearing the manager's words, Roji smiled and comforted the 9 capital city master, who was like a violent dragon. City lord, the innkeeper didn't mean to neglect us, so please don't bother with him. And I was really lost in my thoughts. Please forgive me, city lord. The manager looked at Ruji gratefully and quickly added, I'll let it go this time. If there's a next time, don't blame me for not giving your city lord face. The 9 capital city lord roared in a dignified manner. After the shopkeeper heard this, he could only keep nodding his head, indicating that he would never do this again. In fact, the shopkeeper was not very afraid of this city lord. After all, the status of his family lord was the same as the 9 capital city lord. However, living in other people's territory, he still had to give some face to the city lord. Seeing the shopkeeper's good attitude, the 9 capital city lord was satisfied. Then he asked the shopkeeper to see those gods. When the shopkeeper heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little awkward. If you want to see him, why are you talking to him? He couldn't make the decision. Moreover, he really didn't want to get involved in the feud between these two families. If the 9 capital city lord didn't care about what happened before, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to inform them. But if these two groups of people started fighting as soon as they met, who would compensate for the losses of his shop? Seeing the shopkeeper's hesitation, Roji smiled gently. Shopkeeper, we just want you to pass on a message that we are here to visit. Then please wait for a moment, City Lord and Lady Ro. When the innkeeper heard this, he knew that he couldn't keep a low profile. However, if it was just an errand, he could still do it. His only wish was that these two groups of people didn't fight in his inn. He didn't know if his small wish could be realized. Thanks. After saying that, the shopkeeper turned around and went upstairs. Watching the back of the inn manager, the 9 capital city lord said in dissatisfaction, "Why are you being so polite to that old thing?" "I'm the 9 capital city lord. There's no need for us to lower our heads to him." Seeing the 9 capital city lord's barbaric look, Ruji helplessly pouted her lips and thought, "Be more polite. If you offend someone and they report to your master, won't you offend another city lord? As the saying goes, you have to look at the owner before you hit the dog." Unfortunately, this one-track-minded and low-intelligence 9 capital city lord didn't understand this principle. Every time this happened, it was Ruji's biggest headache. But fortunately, the 9 capital city lord was still obedient. Therefore, Ruji couldn't have high expectations of him. As Ruji's thoughts ran wild, the shopkeeper came down from upstairs and came to the 9 capital city lord. "City lord, Miss Lung and the others would like to see you upstairs." When the shopkeeper said this, he still felt a little regretful. "I can't watch any more." If he met them in a restaurant or the main hall, he could act as a fire extinguisher in case they got into a disagreement, so that they wouldn't destroy the decorations in his shop. However, they had chosen to meet in the room, so he couldn't just follow them in. Of course, the shopkeeper only dared to think about these things in his heart. He would never dare to show it. Otherwise, not to mention Lung Ruoxue and the rest, even the 9 capital city lord would be the first to beat him up. At this moment, the 9 capital city lord nodded in satisfaction after hearing the manager's words. Then, he held Ro Ji's slender waist with one hand and the two of them strode upstairs. When he found the room number the manager told him, the 9 capital city lord was just about to get the guards to knock on the door when the door opened by itself. Feng Chuan, who was standing at the door of the room, glanced at the 9 capital city lord and said lightly, "City lord, please come in." He's finally here." They had not waited for so long in vain. However, looking at the 9 capital city lord's appearance, it didn't seem like he was here to pick a fight. The 9 capital city lord nodded and strode into the room. The moment he entered the living room, the 9 capital city lord was completely stunned. Oh my God! How many godly people had come? Although he had sent people to keep an eye on the situation of these gods, he had never asked about the approximate number of them. Therefore, when he saw that the living room was filled with gods, the 9 capital city lord was shocked. But what made him even more frightened was that he couldn't even see the strength of most of the deities. What did this mean? This meant that the other party's strength was above his. As for how much higher, he had no idea. However, at this moment, the 9 capital city lord had completely put away his contempt for these people and did not dare to treat them as his prey. So, Ruji was right. He couldn't eat these people. At this moment, the 9 capital city lord was quite glad that he had listened to Ruji's words. Otherwise, he would have foolishly led his men to attack the inn, and the consequences would have been unimaginable. Thinking of this, the 9 capital city lord couldn't help but carefully turn his head to look at Ruji beside him. He suddenly realized that Ruji was also in a daze. Roa must be frightened too. The 9 capital city lord forced himself to calm down. At the same time, Ruji also came back to her senses. Ruji didn't expect that these people's strength would be beyond her imagination. Chapter 2491. Who is he? 2. Please take a seat, the two of you. Suddenly, a gentle and beautiful female voice rang in the ears of the 9 capital city lord and Roji. The two of them turned their heads at the same time, and their eyes brightened. They were both stunned and petrified again. This woman is so beautiful. She was so beautiful that even heaven and earth lost their color. Even Roji, who had always prided herself on her beauty, felt a sense of inferiority in front of this woman. She couldn't even feel the slightest bit of jealousy. This woman's beauty had already exceeded the limits of what she could bear. Roji admitted that even if she cultivated to the underworld supreme level, her beauty wouldn't be 1/10,000th of this womaness. So, what was there to be jealous about? Roji finally came back to her senses. From the corner of her eyes, she inadvertently glanced at the man sitting beside the beautiful woman. This time, she was so frightened that her face turned pale and her beautiful face lost all color. Even if the man had the same devastatingly beautiful face, She was not in the mood to admire him. Who was he? Roji's heart trembled, and her delicate body trembled. She was so scared. A sense of powerlessness that she had never felt before surged in her heart. She really hoped that her eyes were playing tricks on her and that she had seen the wrong person. Because this person was slightly different from the one in his memory, but the aura on this person was something she could not forget even if she wanted to. Could it be him? Roji was terrified. If this stunning man was really the one she was thinking about, then Roji didn't even dare to imagine what terrible consequences would have happened if she hadn't stopped the 9 capital city lord in time. Regardless of whether he was the one she was thinking about, Roji understood that she could only befriend these divine warriors and never offend them. She also couldn't be like the other families who didn't have eyes and wanted to prey on them. That was simply courting death. Thinking up to this point, Roji couldn't help but reach out to pull the stunned 9 capital city lord. The 9 capital city lord almost lost his composure and roared. But then he saw Roji's face turn black. Being a strict husband, he tactfully swallowed back the roar that he almost let out. However, the corner of his eyes could not help but drift towards Lung Ruoshua. Beautiful. It was really too beautiful. He had lived for a long time and thought that Ruji was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen besides Piaoyao, the #1 beauty of the 9 Nether prison. Today, he realized that he had been looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. There were more beautiful women in this world. Unfortunately, this woman was a divine being. She was not someone he could dream of. In the entire Netherworld prison, there were countless meditation cultivators who were more powerful than him. It seemed that he could only satisfy his eyes. But now, he finally knew why that useless prodigal of his family kept thinking about this woman. Even though that prodigal had been sick, he was still clamoring to capture this woman. Right? Didn't that wastrel say that he wanted to give this girl to the Johua City Lord? If he could really do this, would he be able to benefit from it? The 9 capital city lord's thoughts started to wander. However, Roji, who was standing beside him, could guess what he was thinking. She couldn't help but send him a warning. City Lord, don't have any ideas about that woman. She's not someone you can dream of. I know. I don't dare to think about her. However, we still have to think of a way to get this woman. The 9 capital city lord replied. Thanks, what do you want to do? Do you want to die? Hearing this, Roji was filled with hatred. This useless stinky man, did he know what he was thinking? Why would I? I'm doing this for our future. I can't afford to have this woman, but someone else can. The 9 capital city lord thought Ruji was jealous and quickly explained. Roji was so angry that she couldn't speak. But for the sake of her life, she had to remind him, City Lord, quickly dispel your thoughts. Other people can have such thoughts, but you absolutely can't. Do you understand? Otherwise, I can guarantee that you'll die even faster. Roji's tone was filled with disappointment, but the 9 capital city lord didn't hear it. He continued to explain, Ruji, I really don't have any ideas about this woman. I only need you. Really, I promise. I don't care what you're thinking. In short, you must immediately dispel those thoughts. Otherwise, don't blame me for abandoning you. Seeing the city lord's unrepentant look, Roji gritted her teeth in anger. In the end, she could only say some harsh words. When the 9 capital city lord heard this, he became anxious and explained again, Ruji, how many times do I have to tell you? You're the only one in my heart. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by an angry Ruji. You're thinking too much. I'm doing this for your own good. If you insist on doing things your way, I won't follow you anymore. You've lived enough, but I don't want to die. Roji's voice carried a trace of anger as she looked at the 9 capital city lord with her beautiful eyes. Although she wasn't sure of the man's identity, her intuition told her that he was extremely dangerous, regardless of whether he was the one she was thinking of. Especially when the man was just sitting there calmly, it made her feel even more pressured. Unfortunately, the lecherous man was so immersed in Lung Ruox's beauty that he didn't notice the danger that was about to arrive. This fact made Ruji really want to go up and bite him hard, so that this idiot wouldn't be so unconscious. However, this wasn't the place for a couple to fight. No matter how angry Ruji was, she could only suppress her anger. After a long while, Leng Ruoxue, who was also silent, observed the two's affectionate looks for a long time before she finally smiled and said, "It seems that the two of you have a good relationship. So many of us seem to be invisible in front of you." Ah! Hearing Leng Ruoxue's teasing, Ruoji felt extremely embarrassed. She knew that she had indeed lost her composure, but she couldn't be blamed for it. Who asked this man to be so disappointing? However, the 9 capital city lord, who didn't hear Leng Ruoxue's teasing tone, saw that the others didn't speak and only allowed a woman to speak. He felt like he was being looked down on, so he angrily said, "Who's in charge here? How could he let a woman stand up for him? A woman should go home to give birth to a child and warm the bed for a man. It's really unruly to open her mouth in public." Uncle Long and the others were silent. Could they say that women were the masters of their family? When Ruji heard the brainless 9 capital city lord's words, she wanted to go up and kick him again. What an incompetent guy! Ruji was filled with hatred, but at the same time, she kept winking at the 9 capital city lord, trying to get him to speak less. Didn't she see that everyone's faces had changed? Wasn't it obvious that this woman's position among them wasn't low? What an idiot, can't you tell? Unfortunately, the 9 capital city lord, who was just about to show off his manliness, didn't understand the meaning behind Ruoji's glance. He was too focused on showing off his might in front of Leng Ruoxue. Chapter 2492. Who is he? 3. Leng Ruoxue listened to the 9 capital city lord's words and glanced at the woman beside him who was giving him a look. She continued to smile nonchalantly and said, "I heard that the 9 capital city lord's family is also led by a woman. Why are you acting like a tiger outside?" Pfft. Uncle Long and the others couldn't help but laugh at this. The 9 capital city lord's face instantly turned red. Just as he was about to get angry, Ruji couldn't hold it in and shouted at him, "Damn it, shut your mouth." This further confirmed the fact that the 9 capital city lord was afraid of his own family. Uncle Long and the others laughed even louder, and the poor 9 capital city lord, whose face was so red that it looked like blood was about to drip out, couldn't help but shiver. He whispered to please, "Roa, you're so fierce. Didn't we agree that you'll give me enough face when we're outside?" After he finished speaking, the 9 capital city lord's big eyes seemed to be glistening with tears. The little expression on his face was really aggrieved. The 9 capital city lord was originally a tall, strong man with a bear-like waist. His facial features were quite rough. Although he was not ugly, he could not be compared to a handsome man. However, his current facial features, coupled with his aggrieved expression, looked quite funny. Uncle Long and the others saw this and laughed even more. Ruoji wanted to find a hole to hide in when she heard this hearty laughter. Her beautiful little face quickly turned red. At this time, she saw that the 9 capital city lord seemed to want to say something, so she immediately glared and shouted, "Shut up, or I'll teach you a lesson." Upon hearing this, the 9 capital city lord immediately became obedient. From time to time, he would secretly glance at Ruji with a wronged expression. Seeing that he had finally stopped, Ruji finally let out a sigh of relief. At this time, she didn't have the time to care about whether she was embarrassed or not. As long as this man didn't say anything wrong, she would thank the heavens. After dealing with the 9 capital city lord, Ruji looked at Leng Ruoxue with a smile on her face. She said with an embarrassed look, "I'm sorry, I've made a fool of myself." "It doesn't matter, you're a man. You have to manage it well," Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. These words immediately made Ruoji feel like she had found a soulmate. She immediately agreed, "That's right. Men have to be properly controlled, in case they don't fight for a day and tear down the roof." Seeing Ruji's excited expression, Uncle Long and the others couldn't help but sympathize with the 9 capital city lord. It wasn't scary to be afraid of one's wife. What was scary was that this wife was not the ordinary kind of intrepid. They could already foresee that from now on, the 9 capital city lord would not have a good life. However, Ruji didn't know what Uncle Long and the others were thinking. After finding a common topic with Leng Ruoxue, Ruji was completely relaxed and started chatting with her. After introducing themselves, the two women chatted like old friends who hadn't seen each other for a long time. When they first started chatting, Ruji immediately expressed the attitude of the city lord on behalf of the 9 capital city lord. After that, they didn't talk about anything related to the city lord at all. They were all talking about how to manage men. The men present couldn't say a word on this topic, and all of them were breaking out in cold sweat. They never knew that Lung Ruox's opinion of men had such a fierce side. Usually, she would listen to the words of the evildoer. Why would she become like this when she met another woman who looked weak on the outside but was strong on the inside? Did these two people just meet today? They've only known each other for a short while. How did they get together to talk about how to discipline men? This topic was too scary. Uncle Long and the others listened to the two women's chatter, but their eyes couldn't help but drift to the evildoer and the 9 capital city lord. The 9 capital city lord was like a newborn chick, looking all smacked up. The evildoer was still calm and composed. He had a carefree look on his face, as if Lung Ruoxue was talking about someone else's man and it had nothing to do with him. Uncle Long and the others were very curious. Was the mistress of the dark world really not afraid, or did she know that Shuo was just saying it? It was a pity that no matter how curious they were, the demon would not tell them his true thoughts. After a long time, the two women finally realized that it was getting late, so they had no choice but to give up and plan to continue tomorrow. When the crowd heard the promise that Lung Ruoxue and Ruji had made before they left, they knew that they wouldn't be able to leave tomorrow. After Ruji left, Lung Ruoxue heaved a sigh of relief. She was so tired that she collapsed on the chair. Uncle Long and the others couldn't help but tease. "Shuo, you guys have a good time chatting today." Lung Ruoxue rolled her eyes at Uncle Long and the rest. She then said in an unpleasant tone, "What's the fun for? I'm so tired." "Thanks, then why did you chat with her for so long?" Uncle Long and the others were quite confused. As far as they knew, Shuo wasn't someone who liked to talk. Moreover, he was chatting with a stranger. This was definitely not normal. That woman kept testing me, so I had no choice but to continue chatting with her. She seems to know the evildoer. Lung Ruoxue spoke the truth. After she finished speaking, she even looked at the innocent-looking handsome man beside her with a profound look. "I don't know her." The demon immediately explained. "Ugh. So you guys were just testing each other by talking about how to discipline men." At this moment, Uncle Long understood Lung Ruox's meaning and could not help but ask. "Of course. Didn't you guys hear her? She asked me several times if the evildoer was my man. She must have suspected the identity of a demon, so I had to discuss with her how to discipline men." Lung Ruoxue replied matter-of-factly. His words made Uncle Long and the others speechless. Shue's acting was so realistic that they all believed her. "Shue, are we not leaving the 9 capital city tomorrow?" After hearing Lung Ruox's words, Feng Chuan confirmed. "Stay for a few more days? Let's see what that Madame Ruji is up to," Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. Everyone had no doubts about this. At the same time, Ruji, who had returned to the city lord's mansion, looked depressed. She sat on the chair in her room without saying a word. The 9 capital city lord, who thought she was still angry, was like a mistreated little wife, obediently standing on the side and smiling foolishly to please her. After standing for a long time, Jiu Ducheng's legs were a little sore. He finally mustered up the courage to speak. "Ro, you're still angry with me. I really don't have any designs on that woman. You have to believe me. Believe your head. I'm warning you one more time, don't have any ideas about Lung Ruoxue. Otherwise, you'll definitely die an ugly death." Ro Ji said coldly. She felt even more depressed. In reality, she had chatted with Lung Ruoxue for so long today because she wanted to find out more about the other party, especially about that handsome man. Unfortunately, she didn't know if Lung Ruoxue really didn't take that man seriously or if she was just acting dumb. In any case, she didn't get any clues about anything related to that man. Instead, she was tricked by Lung Ruoxue into saying a lot. Thinking of this, Ruji was furious. However, she believed in her intuition. Even though she did not manage to get any information from Lung Ruoxue, she was not willing to jump to conclusions so easily. She would not allow the brainless 9 capital city lord to provoke the other party. In short, before she could find out the suspicious points on the man, she would not allow anyone to provoke the other party. Otherwise, no one would be able to save them if they really caused trouble. Ro, the 9 capital city lord, wanted to argue again, but when he saw Ruji's expression, he could only swallow his words. The next day, after Ruji finished her breakfast, she went to the inn alone to look for Lung Ruoxue. To put it nicely, he had to do his best as a host. Lung Ruoxue didn't refuse and went shopping with Ro Ji, the local bully. The evil demon and the others were worried and wanted to follow, but Lung Ruoxue stopped them with the excuse that there was no need for a man to join in the fun when 2 women were shopping. Seeing that the demon and the others didn't follow her, Ro Ji couldn't help but sigh. Look at this man, he was obedient and not lecherous. Too bad, other than envy, she didn't dare to have a single bit of jealousy. Because if that handsome man was really the one in her heart, he wasn't someone any ordinary woman could control. That person shouldn't be so obedient, right? Although Ruji would think this way from time to time, she didn't want to deny the identity of the evildoer. Just like that, the 2 women, each with their own thoughts, traveled together for 3 days. With Ruji's company, Lung Ruoxue had completely explored the 9 capital city. Although there were still people watching from time to time, they obviously didn't dare to get too close to them, perhaps because of Ruji's status. The 9 capital city wasn't too big. After 3 days of walking around, there was nothing else to see. Ruji then warmly invited Lung Ruoxue and the others to visit the city lord's mansion. Lung Ruoxue gave it some thought and agreed. When they knew that they were going to visit the city lord's mansion, Uncle Long and the others didn't have much of a reaction. The one who reacted was the 9 capital city lord. After the 9 capital city lord heard this news, he was so angry that he was about to explode. Damn it! Since he didn't want him to have any ideas about Lung Ruoxue, why did he still bring her to him? Wasn't this clearly wanting him to remember her? The 9 capital city lord expressed his strong anger at Ruji's suggestion. However, Ruji still did as she pleased and ordered the servants of the city lord's mansion to prepare a lot of delicious food for Lung Ruoxue and the others. Seeing that the city lord's mansion was busy welcoming the gods, the 9 capital city lord was very worried. Oh my God! What should he do? Who could tell him? Chapter 2493, Where to Marry? 1. The 9 capital city lord really didn't want to entertain those people. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and would want to take them down in one fell swoop, especially that woman. With her, his status would definitely rise to a new level. However, he still remembered Ruji's warning to him. Therefore, even though he was drooling over Lung Ruoxue and the others, he didn't dare to act rashly. Otherwise, if he angered Ruji, he would definitely have to bear the consequences. It had to be said that the 9 capital city lord could be considered a fool with luck. It was precisely because he listened to Ruji's words that he didn't do anything that couldn't be undone. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. But now, he still had some plans. However, he was afraid of Ro Ji's threat and didn't dare to do anything to Lung Ruoxue and the others. One should know that if Ro turned hostile, he would definitely be the one in trouble. The 9 capital city lord paced back and forth in his study gloomily. After thinking hard for a long time, he still didn't dare to ignore Ruji's words. At this time, standing not far away, he could see that the 9 capital city lord's confidant was a little conflicted, and with the intention of sharing his master's worries, he said, "City lord, are you worried about how to entertain those gods? Madame Ro is in charge of this matter, so city lord really doesn't need to worry too much. You're not worried?" Hearing this, the 9 capital city lord raised his head and looked at his confidant. He didn't want to worry, but he had to do it. "City lord, do you have any orders for this subordinate?" Seeing that the 9 capital city lord seemed to be addicted to unspeakable things, the confidant asked carefully. "No, I didn't." The 9 capital city lord said angrily. He didn't know what he should do, so how could he think of what he should do? He couldn't do what he wanted to do. The confidant was not stupid. The city lord clearly had something on his mind. Unfortunately, he was not a worm in the city lord's stomach, so he had no idea what the city lord was struggling with. Suddenly, a guard's voice came from outside the study. Then, the guard pushed the door open and entered, handing a few letters to the 9 capital city lord. The 9 capital city lord casually looked at the letters. These letters were sent by the nearby city lords, saying that they would arrive tomorrow. He'll arrive tomorrow? This piece of news instantly made the 9 capital city lord smile. This was really like someone delivering a pillow after he fell asleep. Since all the city lords had come in person, he would have to give them a good welcome, right? With that, he would not be fighting alone. This fact made the 9 capital city lord ecstatic. After instructing his confidants to receive him well tomorrow, he left the study in a good mood and went to find Ruji to share his feelings. After the 9 capital city lord left, his confidant kept muttering, "Entertain him well? Was it tomorrow? It can't be such a coincidence, right? Is the city lord planning to go against Madame Rowe?" When he thought of this possibility, it was his confidant's turn to be conflicted. However, since he was the city lord's man, he naturally couldn't betray the city lord for such a small matter. However, if he didn't send a letter to Madame Rowe, when Madame Rowe got angry, he would be the one in trouble. With this thought, the confidant didn't think that he had betrayed the city lord by tipping off Madame Rowe. He thought that he had done it for the harmony of the city lord's mansion. Otherwise, if the two of them fought, the little ones would also suffer. Thanks in addition, Rowe-Jis combat strength had always been above the city lordess. Even if he was the city lord's confidant, he didn't want to offend Rowe-Ji. Otherwise, if Madame Rowe tried to spread some pillow talk to the city lord, he would be the one in trouble. After understanding this, his confidants happily began to act as spies. After Ruji heard this, she just sneered and looked at the 9 capital city lord who was acting like an idiot in front of her. He really didn't know what was good for him. Rowe-Jis' eyes became more and more unfriendly as she looked at the 9 capital city lord. However, she was smart and didn't act up immediately. On the contrary, the 9 capital city lord saw Rowe-Jis' face turn ugly after hearing the servant girls whisper and didn't know what to do. "Rowe, who made you unhappy? Tell me and I'll definitely punish him. You must be tired of living if you dare to provoke my Rowe." The 9 capital city lord laughed in an extremely wretched manner. "City lord, I heard that a few city lords will be coming tomorrow?" Rowe-Jis' expression suddenly changed as she said with a smile. Originally, she didn't want to lay her cards on the table with the city lord, but since he took the initiative to ask, she naturally couldn't disappoint him, right? The 9 capital city lord's heart trembled when he heard this. Damn it, how did Rowe know about this? Who's faster to tell me? This was preposterous. Rowe, they're coming to the 9 capital city in person. As the city lord, I can't just avoid them. Don't you agree? The 9 capital city lord carefully said. You're right. Then you'll have to entertain them well tomorrow. As for Lung Ruoxue and the rest, I will be entertaining them in my courtyard. There's no need for city lord to attend. Rowe-Ji said after some thought. In fact, the nearby cities had already sent people over. However, they didn't do anything and just kept watching in the dark. Therefore, Ruji didn't pay much attention to them. But now, the city lords had come. This matter could be big or small. Therefore, Ruji had to be on high alert and deal with the changes by staying calm. This isn't very good, is it? I'm a guest of the city lord's mansion, can I not show myself? Rowe-Jis' words made the 9 capital city lord hesitate. He really wanted to see that beauty, but Rowe was too jealous to let him see her. What's not good about it? They were invited in my name, so it had nothing to do with you. Besides, don't you have to entertain the city lords tomorrow? Since that's the case, I naturally won't hold you up from serving our distinguished guests. Rowe-Ji gritted her teeth and looked at the 9 capital city lord with her beautiful eyes that seemed to be spitting fire. Then Ruji changed the topic and warned again, tomorrow, no matter what those city lords say, you have to pretend to be deaf and dumb. If you dare to agree to anything, don't blame me for falling out with you. Don't worry. I won't agree to anything, I promise. Roj's threat was very effective on the 9 capital city lord. He didn't even need to think and immediately agreed. At the same time, his little heart trembled with excitement. The way he looked at Roji became more and more affectionate. Ruji's angry look was so beautiful. Ruji couldn't help but feel proud when she saw the 9 capital city lord's infatuation. Although the 9 capital city lord was not a good match for her, at least this man listened to her, and that was enough. The next day, Lung Ruoxue led a large group of people to the city lord's residence. After being led to her courtyard by the enthusiastic Ruji, Ruji turned to Lung Ruoxue with an apologetic look. "Young Miss Ling, I'm really sorry. Today, there are a few city lords from nearby cities coming. Therefore, I gave up the main courtyard to them and can only entertain you here. I hope you don't mind." "It's fine." Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly. Chapter 2494. Where to Marry? 2. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue truly didn't mind, Ruji was relieved. The banquet began. Ruji pulled Lung Ruoxue to eat and chat passionately. The evildoer and the others automatically pretended to be invisible again, burying their heads in their food and not saying a word. After an unknown period of time, Roje's gaze finally landed on the evildoer and the rest. She whispered to Lung Ruoxue, "Miss Lung, your man seems to be quite introverted. He hasn't said a word. He's very shy." Lung Ruoxue said calmly when she saw Ruji testing the waters again. Hearing these few words, the evildoer sitting by the side eating couldn't help but feel his forehead fill with black lines. Was he shy? However, in order to match Lung Ruoxue's words, he deliberately lowered his head and leaned into Lung Ruoxue's arms. Lung Ruoxue took the evildoer into her arms and kissed him on his handsome face. In an instant, the evildoer's fair and tender face was stained with a hint of pink. Seeing this, Roji didn't know what to do. Her suspicion of the evildoer's identity wavered. If he was that man, he wouldn't let a woman take advantage of him in public. However, every time she thought of this, she couldn't convince herself. She sighed and decided to ignore this scene. In any case, she would not be able to figure out the true identity of these people in a short period of time. Lung Ruoxue was really cunning. She glanced at Lung Ruoxue, who had a sweet smile on her face and was holding the evildoer in her arms. A sense of powerlessness welled up in her heart. At this moment, Ruji heard a commotion outside the courtyard. A servant girl asked, "The lord of the 9 capital city is here." Instantly, a wave of anger replaced the sense of powerlessness in Ruji's heart. "Damn it! Didn't I tell him not to disturb me?" Roji was very angry, but the 9 capital city lord had already strode into the courtyard with a few middle-aged men in luxurious clothes following behind. The 9 capital city lord came in front of Ruji with a smile. He pretended to be calm and said, "Ruji, the city lords of 9 Mountain City heard that you were in the manor and came to see you. Are you here to see me?" Roji's fiery eyes shot towards the 9 capital city lord, making him tremble. However, at this moment he couldn't act too cowardly. He could only force himself to smile at Roji. In reality, his back was already drenched in cold sweat. So, Ruji's expression was so scary. At this moment, he regretted listening to the instigations of the 9 Mountain City lords. After everyone left, he would probably suffer. Since the city lord of 9 Mountain City and the others are here to see me, he'll have to ask you to leave now that you've seen me. I have an important guest today, so I don't have time to entertain you. After staring at the 9 capital city lord for a while, Roji said coldly. Hearing her words, the city lords of 9 Mountain City felt even more embarrassed. Never in their dreams would they have thought that a little concubine would not even give them face. It seemed that the city lord of 9 Mountain City was too useless. He couldn't even handle a concubine. Thinking of this, the city lords looked at the 9 capital city lords with disdain. The 9 capital city lord's face was burning, and he really wanted to find a hole to hide in. Thanks, this was too embarrassing, wasn't it? In the end, in order to show off his manliness, the 9 capital city lord shamelessly brought a few other city lords and stayed behind. When Ruji saw this, she could do nothing but glare at him. Roji had no choice but to send a message to Lung Ruoxue to apologize. After receiving Lung Ruoxue's forgiveness, Roji could finally relax. At this moment, the 9 capital city lord, who was unwilling to be left out, took the initiative to introduce Lung Ruoxue and the rest to the other city lords. When the other city lords first saw Lung Ruoxue and the rest, they looked exactly the same as the 9 capital city lords from before. "Miss Lung, I've long heard of your great name." The city lord of 9 Mountain City was the first to speak. The scheming look in his eyes was fleeting, but Lung Ruoxue and the rest still caught the desire and greed in his eyes. Uncle Long and the others couldn't help but look at each other and smile bitterly. It seemed that they had really become the prey of these people. I knew the food in the city lord's mansion wouldn't be that good. Now, they had become meat on the other people's and vultures. They just didn't know if these people could bite them. Turning around, Uncle Long and the rest saw that the evildoer was still lying in Lung Ruoxue's arms and eating his food elegantly. They continued eating calmly, leaving Lung Ruoxue to deal with the ferocious wolves around them. When Lung Ruoxue heard the city lord's words, she merely smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. However, the calm and composed smile on her face still captured the hearts of the city lords. Everyone, including the 9 capital city lords, could feel their hearts beating faster. The way they looked at Lung Ruoxue was also becoming more and more heated. Ruji saw that things were not going well and quickly moved to the side, blocking their gazes towards Lung Ruoxue. This was to prevent these guys from provoking Lung Ruoxue and implicating them. However, Roji's actions had also angered the other lustful city lords, especially 9 Mountain City Lord, who had already treated Lung Ruoxue as his property. He roared in anger, "Ruji, what are you doing? Get out of my way, don't block me from looking at the beauty." Hearing this, Ruji gave Lung Ruoxue a "you're on your own" look and pulled back the half of her body that was in front of Lung Ruoxue. If someone wanted to court death, no one could stop them. Just don't drag her down. Roji was still afraid of Lung Ruoxue and the others, but it was a pity that she couldn't control their thoughts, especially those men who were already lustful. Seeing that Ruji was tactful, 9 Mountain City Lord was satisfied. But the 9 Capital City Lord was a little annoyed. The damned 9 Mountain City Lord actually dared to berate his woman in front of him. This was preposterous. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Especially when he saw Ruji's aggrieved and tearful eyes, the aura of a hero saving a beauty burst out. Without thinking, he directly punched the 9 Mountain City Lord's face. The 9 Mountain City Lord, who was suddenly punched, was dazed. However, he quickly regained his senses and glared at the 9 Capital City Lord with an angry look. He roared, "Damn you old ghost, why did you hit me? Are you trying to provoke me? I'll hit you if you dare to yell at my woman. Do you want a one-on-one fight?" The 9 Capital City Lord roared back in anger. "Let's fight one-on-one, who's afraid of who?" The 9 Mountain City Lord's anger grew. After the two of them finished shouting, they really started fighting in the middle of the hall. Lung Ruoxue looked at this dramatic scene and blinked her beautiful eyes speechlessly. When Ruji saw this, she explained in satisfaction, "We men of the 9 Nether prison are like this. We fight whenever we want, regardless of the occasion and place." Chapter 2495. Where to Marry? 3. Ruji was quite satisfied with the reaction of the 9 Capital City Lord. She didn't pretend to be pitiful in vain. This was a man with guts. How could he act as if nothing had happened when his woman was being bullied? How could he be called a man? Lung Ruoxue nodded in understanding. After an unknown period of time, the 2 city lords who were on par with each other finally stopped. The 2 of them, with their bruised faces, returned to their seats as if nothing had happened. They ate and drank as they pleased, leaving Lung Ruoxue dumbfounded. Because the 2 guys who had just fought like 2 cockfights were actually drinking together again. Could this be the so-called friendship between bad friends? Lung Ruoxue could not understand. Previously, they looked like mortal enemies, but in the blink of an eye, the 2 of them had become good brothers. She believed that the relationship between these city lords was definitely not like that of her Uncle Long and the others. The more they fought, the better their relationship would be. When there was a real conflict of interest, these people would definitely turn hostile and immediately go their separate ways. It was precisely because of this that Lung Ruoxue could not understand the inexplicable relationship between them. But perhaps this was the way they got along. In reality, Lung Ruoxue's guess was right. Normally, although these city lords would scheme against each other and kill each other, they would not easily be ruthless to each other. Otherwise, if they really pushed the other party into a corner, both sides would definitely suffer. This way of living was also the way of survival in the Nine Nether prison. Unless they were forced to, no one would really kill the other party, even if they had been fighting until their heads were bleeding just a moment ago. Just as Lung Ruoxue was expressing her surprise at their interaction, she suddenly heard a cry of pain. Turning around, Lung Ruoxue realized that the 9 capital city lord and the rest were all clutching their stomachs and rolling on the ground. Even Ruji, who was by her side, wasn't spared. What was going on? Lung Ruoxue looked at the demon in confusion. Then, she heard the demon cry out in pain, "Shui, my stomach hurts." After the demon finished speaking, he actually fainted. The moment Lung Ruoxue saw this, she turned pale with fright. After that, she saw with her own eyes that Uncle Long and the others fell unconscious one after another. Upon seeing this, Lung Ruoxue's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Alright, since something had happened to everyone, it would be a little inappropriate if nothing happened to her. With this thought, Lung Ruoxue directly fell to the side, right on top of Ruji. The pain was so intense that Ruji, who wanted to roll on the ground, felt much more awake when she felt the weight on her body. However, when she saw that Lung Ruoxue and the others had all fainted, she was flustered. Damn it! What was going on? Food poisoning? Ruji couldn't believe that something had happened to the food she had prepared. She had spent a lot of money to prepare the freshest food for Lung Ruoxue and the others. Therefore, she was very confident in the food she had prepared. There was no problem with it. If there was no problem with the food, it must have been poisoned. As soon as such a thought appeared in her mind, her heart turned cold. Who on earth had the guts to poison the city lord's mansion? He was really tired of living. Ruji was furious. At this moment, a few wild laughs entered Ruji's ears. Ruji looked up despite the excruciating pain and saw the 2 people she didn't want to see the most. "Young Master Cheng, madam, how did you get out? Did you guys poison him?" Ruji was shocked, but she still pretended to be calm and asked, "Weren't these 2 people under house arrest by the city lord?" She didn't believe that the city lord would release the mother and son without telling her. "Ha! Do you want to know?" "I'm not telling you," young Master Cheng said with a perverted smile. He sized up Ruji with a gaze filled with greed and lust. "Cheng-o won't tell you, but I can tell you that it was the city lord's heart that ached for us mother and son, and ordered people to release us. We were the ones who poisoned him." The beautiful middle-aged woman next to young Master Cheng gritted her teeth and looked at Ruji with a face full of jealousy. She hated Ruji. It was all this damned woman's fault for instigating the city lord to imprison her and her son. If she didn't take revenge for such a deep hatred, wouldn't it be too easy for Ruji? With this thought, the beautiful middle-aged woman walked to Ruji's side. She squatted down and lifted Ruji's chin with one hand. Her pretty face revealed a ferocious smile. "If I disfigure this face that likes to seduce men, I wonder if the women of the 9 Nether prison will thank me?" "Thanks, you can try," Ruji said with a faint smile. Hearing this, the 9 capital city lord endured the intense pain and said to the beautiful middle-aged woman, "You dare! If you dare to hurt Ruji, I won't let you off." "What's wrong? You still dare to threaten me at this time? Aren't you afraid that my brother will find out and come after you?" The beautiful middle-aged woman roared with jealousy. Do you really think that you're so important to the mayor of Jihua City? Let me tell you the truth. The Lord of Jihua City has warned me more than once not to spoil you and your son. It's all because we're husband and wife, and I've been tolerating you for the sake of the Lord of Jihua City. So, you'd better know your place. If you dare to hurt Ruji, don't blame me for being ruthless. the 9 capital city lords said coldly. These words made the middle-aged woman furious, and Ruji burst into tears. City Lord, Roji was so touched that she called out softly. Although this man's strength wasn't high, and he bullied the weak and feared the strong, she really had nothing to say to him. More importantly, he knew how to protect her at the critical moment. What else could a woman ask for when she had a husband like this? Ruji, I won't let anyone bully you. The 9 capital city lord also replied affectionately. Their affectionate interaction deeply provoked the beautiful middle-aged woman. She turned to her son in anger and said, Cheng, haven't you always been interested in this bitch? Today, I'll reward you with this slut. Don't you dare. Upon hearing this, the 9 capital city lord's eyes were spitting fire as he glared fiercely at the mother and son not far away. What's there to be afraid of? The beautiful middle-aged woman said in a disapproving manner. Mother, I'm no longer interested in Ruji. What I want is this woman from the divine realm. Young Master Cheng pointed at Leng Ruoxue, who was also unconscious, with his mouth full of saliva. Originally, he had planned to give this woman to his father. However, after his father refused to avenge him after he was injured, he changed his mind. Now, he wanted to have a taste of this woman himself before giving her to his uncle. Young Master Cheng was quite satisfied with his plan. However, Ruji's expression changed drastically when she heard his words. You're looking for death. This was simply courting death. Seeing young Master Cheng walking towards them, Roji's face turned pale from the pain. She hurriedly pulled Leng Ruoxue behind her to protect her. Regardless of whether the man she suspected was really who she thought he was, she couldn't let the lecherous young Master Cheng destroy Leng Ruoxue. This wasn't to say that she was kind or had a sense of justice. Putting aside the issue of that man's identity, it was also because she treated Leng Ruoxue as her only friend. At the very least, Leng Ruoxue had never revealed an expression of disdain towards her. It was precisely because of this that she couldn't allow Leng Ruoxue to be defiled in front of her eyes. Enduring the bone-piercing pain in her body, Roji's eyes became more and more determined. When young Master Cheng saw it, he found it an eyesore. Move! He shouted. Young Master Cheng rebuked coldly. Don't even think about it. Roji didn't want to compromise, and she couldn't compromise. Seeing this, young Master Cheng was furious. He immediately stretched out a leg and kicked at Ruji's heart. Ruji, who was already extremely weak from the poison, couldn't withstand the force of the kick. She spat out a mouthful of blood and her face turned paler. Roji stretched out a snow-white hand to wipe the dark red blood from her lips. She looked at young Master Cheng coldly and said, I won't let you have your way. When young Master Cheng heard this, he angrily kicked out again. This time, the strength of his kick was quite strong, and it directly sent the weak Ruji flying. With a bang, Roji hit the wall and fainted. When the 9 capital city lord saw this, he quickly dragged his sick body over. When the beautiful middle-aged woman saw this, the hatred in her heart deepened. At this moment, young Master Cheng had also come close to Leng Ruoxue. Just as he was about to reach out to touch Leng Ruoxue's beautiful face, she suddenly opened her eyes. Leng Ruoxue glanced at Ruji, who had fallen to the ground like a broken doll, then turned to look at Child Cheng. After sizing up young Master Cheng, Leng Ruoxue deliberately put on a fearful expression and exclaimed, What do you want to do? What do I want to do, doesn't the beauty know? Don't worry. After having fun with me, they'll find you a good family to marry into. Young Master Cheng laughed in a perverted manner. You want to marry me off? Where to? Leng Ruoxue asked curiously. Of course you're going to marry my uncle. He's the mayor of Jiahua City, one of the 10 major cities. What do you think? I'm good to you, right? Jiang Chen said. Child Cheng laughed complacently. The way he looked at Leng Ruoxue was as if she was already in his bag. Why are you still wasting your breath on her? Hurry up and do it. The beautiful middle-aged woman was burning with jealousy. After hearing her son's words, she urged him impatiently. Suddenly, she turned around and saw Leng Ruoxue's beautiful face. The anger in her heart grew even more. Chapter 2496. Who said we were poisoned? What? Damn it, another vixen. The city lord's wife looked at Lung Ruoxue with jealousy burning in her eyes. She wished that she could rush forward and disfigure her beautiful face. However, after thinking about it, she realized that her son's words made sense. He would be very happy to give such a beauty to his brother. At the thought of this, the city lord's wife continued to urge, "Cheng'er, if you want her, then make your move quickly. We still have a lot of things to do." "All right, mother." Child Cheng smiled smugly as he extended his pair of wolf claws towards Lung Ruoxue's beautiful face. Lung Ruoxue dodged to the side and avoided young Master Cheng's hand. Seeing this, young Master Cheng was furious. This was the third time. This was the third time he had reached out to touch this woman. The first time, he had broken both his hands and had to go through a lot of trouble to reattach them. The second time, she had dodged. The third time, she still dared to dodge? Could it be that this detestable woman couldn't see the current situation? No one could help her now. With that thought, young Master Cheng lecherously said, "Woman, be tactful and quickly give yourself to me. I might treat you gently. Otherwise, don't blame me for being too rough. What if I don't want you to be gentler?" Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly. "Oh, the beauty also likes strong taste. Very good, I also like this." When young Master Cheng heard this, his smile became even more wretched. Lung Ruoxue smiled as well, tacitly agreeing to his words. At this moment, Ruji slowly woke up and happened to hear young Master Cheng's words. She struggled and hurriedly shouted, "Miss Lung, don't be afraid of him. I won't let him have the chance to hurt you." When young Master Cheng heard this, he glared at Ruji and said fiercely, "Bitch, you can't even protect yourself, yet you still dare to meddle in other people's business. You will regret this. You'll get your retribution." Ruji growled weakly, half lying in the arms of the Nine-Capital City Lord. "Bitch, I dare you to say that again." Hearing Ruji's curse, young Master Cheng was furious. The next moment, he rushed in front of Ruji and wanted to teach her a lesson. When the Nine-Capital City Lord saw this, he immediately raised his head and roared, "No, what do you want to do? If you dare to lay a finger on Ro-er again, I'll immediately banish you from the family. In the future, I'll treat it as if I don't have a son." "Ha! How could you treat your son like this for a woman? You're really a good father. However, you don't need to kick me out of the family, because I'm already the city lord of the Nine-Capital City." Young Master Cheng laughed maniacally as he spoke. "That's right. You useless man, how could you treat us like this for a cheap woman? Since you're heartless, then don't blame us for being heartless. Now that Nine-Capital City is my son's, you, the previous city lord, can just step aside." The city lord's wife also agreed. Hearing these words, the Nine-Capital City Lord was a little dumbfounded. How did this happen? Thanks at that moment, the Nine-Mountain City Lord, who was in excruciating pain, could not bear to watch any longer. He endured the pain and said, "Why did you drag us into your family conflict? Give us the antidote, and well let it go. Otherwise, don't blame us for working together to demand justice from the Johua City Lord." Fuck. They had definitely suffered an undeserved calamity from the Nine-Capital City Lord. What did it have to do with them when the husband and wife did not get along and their son seized power? However, they had been implicated. It was really too unlucky. However, the city lord's wife wasn't threatened by the Nine-Mountain City Lord. She calmly said, "I'm sorry, there's no antidote for this poison." "No antidote? What kind of poison is this?" When Nine-Mountain City Lord heard this, his face turned pale with fear. He then said in disbelief, "Don't lie to me. How can there be no antidote? Are you going to send a dead man to the Johua City Lord?" The dead person he was referring to was Lung Ruoxue. He didn't believe that the other party would allow anything to happen to Lung Ruoxue if they wanted to give her to the Johua City Lord. If that was the case, would this mother and son still want to get any benefits from her? It was simply a lake at night. I'm sure you've heard of this poison before. It's called heartbreak. As for the poison that these deities were inflicted with, it's different from yours. Therefore they won't die. Don't worry, you won't die immediately. I'll let you see my son take the city lord's position with your own eyes. The city lord's wife explained proudly. Hearing the word heartbreak, the city lords' faces became even more unsightly. Even the 9 capital city lord and Ruji looked defeated. Heartbreak was a legendary poison in the netherworld prison. In the beginning, one would only feel pain all over the body. However, this pain was intermittent. Other than pain, it would not take one's life for the time being. However, in the later stages, it would slowly fester in the abdomen until one died. There was indeed no antidote for a poison like gut-cutting poison. At least, they had lived for so long and had never heard of anyone who could cure the poison. Now that they knew that they had suffered from heartbreak, the city lords were all terrified and furious, and their expressions became more and more unkind as they looked at the city lord's wife and the city lord. None of them had expected that the city lord's wife would be so ruthless the moment she made a move. City lord's wife, we have no grudges with you. You poisoned us like this. Are you really not afraid that we will join forces and attack the 9 capital city? At this time, another city lord could not help but ask, let's talk about it after you leave the 9 capital city alive. If you die, I believe that some of your families will be grateful to me. The city lord's wife said with a smile. Hearing the city lord's wife say so, the other city lords also understood. Since she dared to do such a thing, she definitely had nothing to fear. It seemed that the mother and son had already made plans. Cleaning them up was just a convenient way to do them a favor. After thinking it through, the city lords were filled with regret. They regretted coming to the 9 capital city together out of greed. Now, they had given others a chance to take advantage of them and put them in prison. When she saw that the city lords seemed to be regretting their decision, the city lord's wife did not sympathize with them and was too lazy to care about them. She then turned her fierce gaze towards Lung Ruoxue and said to her son, Cheng, why are you still hesitating? Hurry up and capture this woman. I just saw mother chatting with the uncles. Child Cheng laughed evilly and went to Lung Ruoxue's side. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. She thought to herself, this mother and son finally noticed me again. They finally stopped treating me like I'm invisible. It didn't feel good to be ignored, even if it was by your enemy. Beauty, did you miss me? Seeing that Lung Ruoxue seemed to have something on her mind, young Master Cheng teased her with a smile. I didn't tea. Lung Ruoxue spoke the truth. It doesn't matter. Once you've tasted my abilities, you won't be able to leave me, young Master Cheng said confidently. Chapter 2497. Who said we were poisoned? 2. Your ability? Which field? Lung Ruoxue asked with a pure and innocent look. Of course it's the one on the bed. Young Master Cheng said with a proud smile, then he was about to take off his clothes. Wait, you're that young Master Cheng, right? Lung Ruoxue quickly stopped him. You're not planning to perform in public, are you? I'm very shy. Lung Ruoxue's words were rather reserved, and young Master Cheng understood the moment he heard it. He laughed wildly again. That's true. Beauty, let's go to another place. With that, young Master Cheng wanted to pull Lung Ruoxue back, but she stood up on her own and said, I can walk on my own. Where to? She didn't want to be touched by a cheap man. When young Master Cheng saw this, he pointed to the room behind the living room. Let's go there. After hearing this, Lung Ruoxue walked straight to the back of the living room. When Ruji saw this, she was worried and immediately shouted, Miss Lung, don't go with him. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue stopped in her tracks and said to Ruji, Madam Ro, I'm like a piece of meat on someone's chopping board. I have to go. That's right. Ruji, you'd better behave yourself. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Young Master Cheng's eyes widened as he threatened angrily. However, he was about to get a beauty, so he was in a good mood and naturally didn't want to waste time bickering with Ruji. Lung Ruoxue and young Master Cheng arrived at the small room behind the living room. The moment they entered the room, young Master Cheng pounced towards Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue dodged his attack with a slight movement. When young Master Cheng saw this, he wasn't angry, but found it very interesting. He liked this kind of shrewish woman. This kind of woman was full of flavor. Beauty, don't be afraid. It'll satisfy you. Young Master Cheng consoled her with a perverted smile. Oh, are you sure you can do it? Lung Ruoxia's beautiful eyes scanned young Master Cheng from head to toe. She even focused her attention on a certain part of his body below his abdomen, as though she was very suspicious of his words. Young Master Cheng realized that he was being looked down on, so he immediately straightened his back and said confidently, "Why don't you try it? I guarantee that you've never experienced a man as wild as me." "Oh really? I'll give it a try then." Lung Ruoxia smiled. When young Master Cheng heard this, he started to undress excitedly. Lung Ruoxia saw this and did not stop him. When a certain horny guy was only left with a pair of white underpants, Lin Sanjiu continued to size him up. After a few glances, Lung Ruoxia sighed repeatedly. "Damn it, why are you sighing?" Young Master Cheng said angrily. Was this detestable woman not satisfied with him? "Young Master Cheng, your figure is really too bad. I'm very disappointed," Lung Ruoxia said with a look of disdain. "Damn it, my body is one of the best in the 9 Nether prison, and you're not satisfied?" Young Master Cheng roared in anger. "Thanks, ranked? Who did he queue with? The evil ghost of the Netherworld prison? If you're compared to them, your figure, coupled with that human-like face, is indeed better than them." Lung Ruoxia laughed evilly. "Detestable. Woman, I'll let you have a taste of your mouth first, and you'll soon know how powerful I am." Young Master Cheng threatened with a menacing look on his face. After he finished speaking, he pounced towards Lung Ruoxia. This time, Lung Ruoxia didn't even try to dodge. Just when young Master Cheng thought he had succeeded, he suddenly realized that there were a few delicate and cute little beasts in front of him, blocking his next move. When did these little beasts appear? Young Master Cheng was flabbergasted. He wasn't stupid, and he could tell that these little beasts were definitely not from the 9 Nether prison. "Cheap man, let's play with you." Baby spoke on behalf of all the little beasts. After he finished speaking, he even deliberately showed off his sharp claws. Looking at the cold lights flashing in front of his eyes, young Master Cheng shivered when he first saw them. However, he soon thought about it. What could these little beasts that were not even the size of his palm do? He could send these little ones flying with a single kick. With such a thought, he naturally wasn't afraid of the threat of the treasure. "Get out of my way, I want a beauty." Young Master Cheng didn't put the small beasts in his eyes and immediately berated them. Baby and the other beasts were not angry when they heard this, but there was no way they could get out of the way. "I said, well, play with you. Don't have any ideas about my master. You don't deserve it." Baby said again. "That's right. We'll let you have a good time too. You have to believe in our abilities." Yao interrupted with a smirk. "Oh, I'm thinking about where to start." Ling also said in a matter-of-fact manner. "Let me go first. I haven't fought in a long time." Yu, who had not appeared for a long time and had been cultivating all this time, also asked with a look of desire. "All right, I'll let you strike first." The few of them looked at each other and agreed. "Thank you." Yu was very happy. Then he directly showed his sharp eagle claws. A stream of light streaked across the sky, and in an instant, 5 deep claw marks were left on young Master Cheng's red chest. The pain immediately made young Master Cheng cry out in pain. "Detestable!" Young Master Cheng was furious. The consequences would be severe. He had never thought that these little beasts would actually dare to attack him. Unfortunately, before he could react, Bao Bao and the other beasts had already acted at the same time. In a split second, rays of cold light streaked across the sky and landed on young Master Cheng Bangwo's body. Arg! Whoa! Young Master Cheng let out a series of earth-shaking and God-weeping howls. Hearing this, the 9 capital city lords and the others in the hall were all trembling with fear. "Is this a matter?" Following that, loud bangs could be heard, causing the poison city lords to think to themselves that this was quite a big commotion. However, the city lord's wife, who had heard the commotion, was extremely pleased with herself. She laughed wildly with a smug look on her face. "Ha! As expected of my son, you're much stronger than some weak men. When the city lord's wife said this, she even deliberately glanced at the 9 capital city lords. Suddenly, the city lords all knew who the so-called soft man was. For a moment, they all felt a little sympathy for the 9 capital city lord. It was his misfortune to marry such a woman. Fortunately, the 9 capital city lord didn't care much about a certain madam's words. Otherwise, he would be so embarrassed that he would kill himself. Ruji, on the other hand, was surprised to hear this voice. This voice didn't sound like a pervert enjoying himself. Unfortunately, he was too proud to notice the difference in these voices. However, Ruji was relieved. As long as she couldn't hear Lung Ruox's voice, she would be fine. Otherwise, she would have to die to atone for her sins. After an unknown period of time, the sounds from the small room behind the living room gradually faded. Other than low moans, there were no more violent collisions. Chapter 2498. Who said we were poisoned? 3. A moment later, Lung Ruoxue walked out from behind with a refreshed expression. The few city lords quickly looked up and sized her up. From her appearance, she did not look like someone who had been tortured. However, the few of them were smart enough not to say their guesses. At this moment, the city lord's wife also looked at Lung Ruoxue and said with an ambiguous expression, "What do you think? My son is not bad, right?" When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she couldn't help but frown. These words really didn't sound like something a mother should say. It's just barely satisfactory. She still gave him face. "What did you just say? My son has been tormented for so long, and you're still not satisfied?" He still dared to say that he was barely satisfactory? "It looks like you really are a cheap person," the city lord's wife said angrily. City lord's wife, whether I'm a cheap person or not, what does it have to do with how long your son has been tormented? However, since you've said so, he'll have a good talk with you. Your son is really not good enough. I haven't even made a move yet. He was already lying on the ground. Sigh. I guess you can't understand the disappointment in my heart. Lung Ruoxue complained with a sorrowful expression. However, the mayor's wife clearly didn't believe her and retorted loudly, "My son can't be that useless. You must be lying to me. Since you don't believe me, they'll have to show you the evidence so that you won't accuse me," Lung Ruoxue said with a helpless expression. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone saw a few cute little beasts walking out from the back of the hall in elegant small steps. Those little beasts were dragging a rope in their claws, and the other end of the rope was tied to a bloody mess, obviously in a deep coma. If it could be considered a person. Oh my God! Who is this guy? Looking at the bloody piece of meat, the city lords were all frightened and felt a chill down their backs. This kind of fear that made them break out in cold sweat from the bottom of their feet had never appeared when they knew that they were poisoned, but now they had it. The city lord's wife naturally saw the piece of flesh as well. Following that, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. Her hand trembled as she pointed at the bloody piece of flesh and said, Who is he? Young Master Cheng, your son?" Lung Ruoxue sneered. Hearing Lung Ruox's answer, the few city lords could not help but shiver. They all recalled how they had flirted with Lung Ruoxue previously. Although they had not gone too far, if she were to come after them for revenge, they would not be able to escape from their current situation. Thinking of this, the city lords wished they could pretend to be invisible, not daring to say a word. Otherwise, if the other party treated them the same way he treated young Master Cheng, they would definitely not be able to escape death. So, it's too scary, isn't it? At this moment, the clear claw marks on young Master Cheng's body were so deep that his bones could be seen. It was a reminder to them just how ruthless the other party's claws were. This is impossible. The city lords believed Lung Ruox's words, but a certain madam didn't. She couldn't convince herself that the bloodied fellow in front of her was her son. Her son wouldn't be so useless. Since madam doesn't believe me, I can only prove it to you. Lung Ruox's smile was rather evil. She gave her precious a look, and her precious understood and immediately threw a pill into young Master Cheng's half-opened mouth. Not long after, young Master Chung woke up, and the injuries on his body had completely healed. The city lords were once again stunned by this scene. Wasn't the effect of this pill a little too good? However, before they could think further, they were disturbed by young Master Cheng's pig-like howl. "Mother! Save me! Save me! These guys aren't human. Ooh, they're bullying me!" The moment young Master Cheng saw his mother, he immediately called for help. When the city lord's wife saw that the blood clot was really her son, she became anxious. She glared at Leng Ruoshu and shouted, "Damn little bitch, quickly order these little bastards to let go of my son." "You bastard! You're the little bastard, your entire family are little bastards." Hearing them being called little bastards, Baby was unhappy. After giving his friends another look, Baby and the other beastie reenacted the scene in the small room in front of everyone who was still clear about the situation. A cold glint flashed in front of their eyes, and pieces of flesh flew in all directions. The terrifying and bloodthirsty scene petrified the few city lords present once again. Their bodies also trembled involuntarily. It was too terrifying. Even though they had lived in the Nine Nether prison for so long, they had never seen such a torturous scene. Compared to these fierce little beasts, the city masters felt that they were as kind as a piece of white paper. These small beasts were most likely the natives of the Nine Nether prison. Boo! Even though they were poisoned, they didn't have the time to think about how long they could live. At this moment, their hearts and minds were moved by those fierce and bloodthirsty little beasts. They were afraid that they would be the next ones to attack. With this thought in mind, the city lords fearfully found their own corners and tried to lower their presence. When the city lord's wife first saw this bloodthirsty scene, she was also instantly scared silly. When she finally came back to her senses, her son had once again become a bloody piece of meat, and this time, she didn't even hear her son's cry of pain. The city lord's wife's anger surged when she saw her son's mouth being gagged by a piece of blood-stained cloth. Then, her face contorted as she glared at Leng Ruoshue and roared, "Damn bitch, I won't let you off." "Thanks, oh really? I'll be waiting. However, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to do so." With that, Leng Ruoshue walked towards the city lord's wife, causing her to retreat in fear. What are you doing?" the city lord's wife said with a trembling voice. She couldn't deny that she was a little scared, especially when she saw that the little beasts had actually abandoned her unconscious son and were walking towards her. She immediately thought of the violent actions of these little beasts, and her heart was instantly filled with fear. The city lord's wife retreated step by step under the pressure of Leng Ruoshue, her baby, and the other little beasts. She kept shouting, "Men! Someone come and protect me." However, at this moment, many of the guards who had just witnessed the terrifying side of the little beasts were so afraid that they did not dare to stand out. "Stop screaming. No one will come to save you at this time." Leng Ruoshue smiled faintly and said, "Impossible. I'm the city lord's wife." The city lord's husband shouted in a self-deceiving manner, "Oh really? If any of you want to save her, feel free to do so." When Leng Ruoshue heard this, she immediately turned towards the guard who had unknowingly retreated into a corner. The moment she asked, the guards simply turned around and ran. When the city lord's wife saw this scene, she was so angry that she almost vomited blood. "I knew these people can't be counted on." Suddenly, the city lord's wife caught a glimpse of the evildoer and the others from the corner of her eye. She quickly pointed at them and said, "Bitch, if you dare to touch a single hair on my head, I'll make them die with me." "Oh really? I think you can try," Leng Ruoshue said nonchalantly, her face full of disapproval. "You're really not afraid? Can you just watch them die?" The city lord's wife couldn't help but ask when she saw that she couldn't threaten the other party. "I feel that even if all of your family members are dead, they won't lose a single hair." Leng Ruoshue smiled. "This is impossible. They were also poisoned. I'm the only one who has the antidote for that poison." The city lord's wife did not believe Leng Ruoshue's words and reminded her once again. "So what if you have the antidote? I'm an alchemist. Would it be difficult for me to concoct an antidote pill?" Leng Ruoshue said with a calm expression. At this time, the demon's voice also sounded, "Who said we were poisoned?" After saying that, evildoer and the others who were unconscious sat up one by one. You, the mayor's wife, widened her eyes in disbelief. Even Roji, who had been paying attention to the development of the situation, couldn't help but be surprised. This is impossible. You guys were clearly poisoned. After a long while, the shocked city lord's wife finally managed to say a complete sentence. "I'm so sorry. Madam, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we weren't poisoned. We were just too tired and took a nap." Uncle Long replied with a smile. This answer made the city lord's wife so angry that she almost vomited blood. Even Ruji, who had been watching the show after realizing that they weren't poisoned, couldn't help but be speechless. Ruji now felt that she had never truly understood the background of these deities. But now, could she be considered to have seen their true faces? It seemed that his decision was correct. Unfortunately, there was an accident, and he didn't know how long he could live. "Uncle Long, let's capture this woman." At this moment, Lung Ruoxue saw that the time was right, so she spoke to Uncle Long and the others. "All right," he said. "Yes, sir." Uncle Long replied and led his men to surround the city lord's wife. This action also caused the city lord's wife, who had been somewhat dazed from the blow, to quickly come back to her senses. The city lord's wife held her head high and puffed out her chest, as if she was a fox exploiting a tiger's might, and loudly said, "How dare you? I'm the wife of the 9 capital city lord." However, before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by the 9 capital city lord, who had a rather ugly expression on his face. "You're no longer the wife of the 9 capital city lord. You!" The city lord's wife heard this and glared at the 9 capital city lord. Then she turned around and shouted at Lung Ruoxue and the rest, "I'm the Jihua city lord's younger sister. Try and touch me. My brother won't let you off." "Oh really? Don't worry, I'll order the Jihua city lord to come and pick you up. I won't kill you before I see him," the demon said coldly. The city lord's wife saw that the other party wasn't threatened by her, and immediately didn't know what to do. How did this happen? She didn't expect that the mayor of Jihua City wouldn't be scared even after she mentioned him. What should she do now? Chapter 2499. Doing a good deed every day. The city lord's wife panicked. Just as the city lord's wife was racking her brain to continue threatening them, Uncle Long looked at the city lord's wife, who was still in a daze, with a little sympathy. Then he took out a rope and tied the city lord's wife, who didn't have time to struggle, like a dumpling. He was afraid that she would cry out, so he cut a piece of cloth from her body and stuffed it into her mouth. After he had completed the task smoothly, Uncle Long glanced at the 9 capital city lord and the rest in disdain before he turned to Lung Ruoxue and the rest and said, "Shui, you can wrap up now." "All right, let's go." Lung Ruoxue nodded. With that, she led the evildoer and the others out of the city lord's mansion. Before she left, the evildoer even glanced at the 9 capital city lord meaningfully, which immediately scared the 9 capital city lord's little heart. It was too terrifying, wasn't it? Although the man only glanced at him, he could feel the coldness in the man's eyes. The coldness made him shiver. He had lived for a long time, but he had never felt like he had half a foot in death. Who was that person? Why did she give him such a terrifying feeling? Even the powerful lord of Jihua City didn't make him feel like he was facing the god of death. The 9 capital city lord was filled with fear. After Lung Ruoxue and the others had left, he helped Ruji up from the ground. At this moment his clothes were already half soaked with cold sweat. What should we do?" The 9 capital city lord looked at his beloved woman affectionately and asked helplessly. "City lord, madam and young master Chung are both in the hands of young lady Lung and the others. What are your plans?" Ji didn't answer, but asked tentatively. When Lung Ruoxue and the others left, they also took the 2 fellows away. This was to her liking. However, she still had to confirm the city lord's intentions. Otherwise, it would be hard for her to make arrangements for her subordinates. Unexpectedly, when the 9 capital city lord heard Ruji's question, he immediately roared in anger, "What other plans can I have? Those two fellows are courting death. Don't expect me to save them. In fact, he could not save her. Regarding this, the 9 capital city lord was still very aware of his own limitations. This feeling became even more intense after he received a glance from the terrifying man before he left. Now, he finally believed in Ruji's words. Ruji had the foresight. Those people really couldn't be provoked. Thinking of this, the 9 capital city lord looked at Ruji with tender eyes. However, Ruji, who had always been generous, blushed under his red and hot eyes. The 9 capital city lord also rarely saw Ruji blushing, so he became even more affectionate. Unfortunately, their affectionate gaze was interrupted by a few people who spoiled the mood. 9 mountain city lord said with a speechless expression, "I say, you two, now is not the time for you to be lovey-dovey. Why don't you think about what to do about the poison in our bodies? Arg. I'm finished. Ruji, we're going to die." After hearing 9 mountain city lord's words, the 9 capital city lord finally remembered that he was still poisoned. When he thought about how he was about to die with the beautiful and lovely Ruji, his heart felt bitter. Thanks Roji, who originally wanted to treat the 9 capital city lord gently, immediately rolled her eyes when she heard his words. She said in an unpleasant tone, "Is this the time to think about being poisoned? Let's think about how we're going to explain this to the Castellan of Jihua City. Why do we need to explain to the Jihua City Lord that we were poisoned?" The 9 mountain city lord could not help but ask in a daze. "Don't you know that the Castellan's wife is the younger sister of the Castellan?" Roji asked as if she was looking at an idiot. "I know. Even if the mayor's wife is the sister of the mayor of Jihua City, we shouldn't be the ones to answer to her for poisoning us. Instead, he should be the one to answer to us, right?" Another city lord couldn't help but ask. "To think that you're a city lord, yet you're so simple-minded. Let me ask you, if someone in your family did something like the mayor's wife did and fell into someone else's hands, would you treat it as if nothing happened, or would you save the person?" Roji asked helplessly. "Depends on the situation." The 9 mountain city lord said honestly. If the other party's strength was inferior to his, then he would definitely have to save him. After all, he was a member of his own clan, and it was up to his own clan to decide how to deal with him. However, if the other party was too strong and he could not gnaw at him, then not only would he have to treat it as if nothing had happened, but he would also have to be careful to prevent the other party from venting his anger on his own clan. In short, such things had to be done randomly and could not be treated the same way. As far as I know, the Jihua City Lord is always protective of his sister. Although he doesn't care about his sister, he'll definitely come for us if he knows something happened to her. By then, we won't be able to escape. Ruji saw that 9 mountain city lord wasn't so stupid that he couldn't be saved, so she reminded him. After Roji finished her words, the city lords all fell silent. Although 9 Nether prison had an unwritten rule that if a family member caused trouble, the family would not get involved. Most of the families who did so were small families who wanted to protect themselves. For example, the families of the city lords of the top 10 main cities did not care how big the trouble caused by their family members was. For the honor of their families, they would not stand by and watch their family members' trouble. In other words, they were going to be in trouble. At the thought of this, the city lords' faces instantly turned pale, and they all had the urge to cry. They couldn't be so unlucky as to suffer the wrath of the 9 capital city lord after being poisoned, right? Woo! The ones who injured the city lord and his wife were obviously not them. They were also victims, okay? However, after seeing Lung Ruakshu's ferocious beasts, they didn't dare to betray her and the others. Those people were probably even more powerful than the Lord of Jihua City. Thinking of this, the city lords were at a loss. After a long silence, the Castellans found that Ruji was quite calm. They couldn't help but ask curiously, "Ruji, do you have any good ideas?" "Yes, I do. I'm just afraid you won't listen," Roji said with a faint smile. "Let's hear it first," the 9 mountain city lord said urgently. "Just go and seek protection from Lung Ruashue and the others." Ruji didn't beat around the bush and said directly. After hearing this, the city lords couldn't help but look troubled. The other party was a god. Not long ago, they had teased him and treated him as their prey. Now, they had to rely on their prey to block the anger of the Lord of Jihua City. They couldn't accept it. Seeing through their thoughts, Roji sneered, "I've already said my opinion. It's not up to me to decide if you'll listen." Chapter 2500. Doing a good deed every day. 2. Ro, what about us? The 9 capital city lord asked carefully. Of course, it's the same, Ruji said. Even though she sounded so certain, she wasn't sure if Leng Ruoxue and the others were willing to take them in. Perhaps they didn't even think highly of them. Ro, if they are gods. If the people in the 9 nether prison know that we have joined the gods, they will look down on us. After thinking for a while, the 9 capital city lord gathered his courage and said. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Ruji with fear and his heart started to beat wildly again. Ro wouldn't be angry at him, would she? The 9 capital city lord couldn't help but think. So what if you're a god? The enemy of our enemy is our friend. Now, the Castellan of Jihua City is our common enemy, so we should work together. Roji said matter-of-factly. In fact, it wasn't that she didn't have any selfish thoughts. She was still suspicious of the evildoer's identity, but she was very clear that unless he admitted it, she would never be able to find out the truth about his identity. After seeing the slight abilities that Leng Ruoxue and the others had displayed, she wanted to take a gamble. If she won the bet, she would be able to return to Jiuyo City openly. If she lost the bet, she wouldn't lose anything, would she? Moreover, she still remembered Leng Ruoxue saying that she was a famous alchemist. Due to their innate attributes, the people in the 9 nether prison couldn't have the profession of an alchemist. As for them, they dreamed of having the opportunity to befriend an alchemist. Now that an alchemist was in front of them, Ruji naturally didn't want to miss it. However, she would not tell these words to the other city lords. It was best if they could figure it out on their own. If they gave up such a good opportunity, she would not sympathize with them. Moreover, no matter what the 9 capital city lord thought, she had already made up her mind. After making up her mind and ordering her trusted subordinates to deal with the aftermath, Roji considerately ordered the city lords, who were still deep in thought, to be sent to their rooms. After returning to her room, Roji saw the 9 capital city lord hesitating to speak. She sighed helplessly and whispered something to him. When the 9 capital city lord heard this, his face turned even paler. He asked in shock and disbelief, really? He was a little scared by Roji's words. However, he knew Roji well. He believed that if she didn't have any clues, she wouldn't have said that. However, he was even more scared. There was an 80 to 90% chance of this happening. He was quite clear about Ruji's previous identity. Although I'm not too sure, my intuition tells me that this person is very dangerous. Roji said with a serious face. Dangerous? It was simply terrifying. It's too terrifying. As if he had found a soulmate, the 9 capital city lord immediately agreed. When he thought about the look in the man's eyes before he left, he broke out in a cold sweat again. Then what is the city lord's decision? Ruji asked. Ruji, I'll listen to you. From now on, I'll listen to you. You decide. The 9 capital city lord said with a lingering fear. Although he couldn't confirm the man's identity, he still had to thank Ruji for her foresight. Fortunately, he didn't foolishly take revenge for Biu Shao. Otherwise, wouldn't he have already offended him? Thanks, with city lord's words, I can rest assured. Castellan, send someone to deliver a letter to the Castellan of Jihua City and report what happened here to him. As for his decision, it's none of our business. Roji suggested. Alright. By the way, what about the 9 mountain city lord and the others? The 9 capital city lord asked. Actually, he wanted to say whether he should tell the other city lords about his guess of the man's identity, but he was afraid that Ruji would be unhappy, so he said it in a more reserved way. Why should we care about their lives? Roji roared in anger. She was a petty woman who held grudges. She had never forgotten how those people had shouted at her and teased Leng Ruoxue. She believed that Leng Ruoxue wouldn't want to see them. No matter. I don't care. I'm just asking. the 9 capital city lord said fearfully. He immediately tucked his tail between his legs and looked at Ruji with an ingratiating expression. City lord, I'm doing this for your own good. Think about how they treated Lung Ruoxue before. If that man's identity is as I've guessed, then Lung Ruoxue is our 9 nether prisons. Ruji said earnestly, deliberately leaving out half of what she had said. But when the 9 capital city lord heard this, he immediately understood and nodded repeatedly, his face full of lingering fear. But then he asked with some confusion, since Ro-er doesn't care about their lives, why did you suggest them to seek the protection of the gods? We are all grasshoppers on the same vine. I have done my part by reminding them. If they don't listen, they naturally can't blame us. This way it will save us a lot of trouble. Ro-ji revealed a cunning smile. Ro-er's words make sense, the 9 capital city lord flattered. His face was still filled with the disgusting expression of how smart Ro-er was. However, Ruji was very pleased to see this. Castellan, write a letter to the Castellan of Jiuhua City. Ruji rolled her eyes at the 9 capital city lord and urged. I'll go now. The 9 capital city lord was excited and eagerly prepared to go to the study room. However, before he left, he asked with a worried look, Ro, what about our poison? Cold. Hurry up and write the letter. Ruji was getting impatient with the 9 capital city lord's hesitation and started to roar. Yes. After the 9 capital city lord responded, he immediately ran to his study. The next day, early in the morning, Ruji had brought the 9 capital city masters to the inn to look for Lung Ruoxue and the others. The moment she saw Lung Ruoxue, Ro-ji immediately apologized to her and said that they had already reported this to the Jiuhua City Lord. She believed that the Jiuhua City Lord would be here soon. At the same time, she also told Lung Ruoxue about the situation with the Jiuhua City Lord. Lung Ruoxue listened to Ruji's endless rambling. In the end, she could only conclude a few things about the situation with the Castellan of Jiuhua City. The Jiuhua City Lord was very protective. The Castellan of Jiuhua City was ruthless, and his way of dealing with his enemies was absolutely daunting. The Castellan of Jiuhua City was also a man who liked beautiful women, and the woman he liked the most was Piaoyao, the most beautiful woman in the 9 nether prison. In summary, Ruji spent half a day explaining. However, after hearing Ruji's words, Lung Ruoxue became interested in the number 1 beauty of the 9 nether prison. Ruji had also mentioned that the biggest dream of the floating jade beauty was to become the nether empress of the 9 nether prison. In that case, she had a potential love rival. Although Lung Ruoxue didn't know if Ruji mentioned the floating beauty on purpose or not, she could see the hatred Ruji had for the floating beauty. When Ruji mentioned the floating beauty, it could be said that she was gnashing her teeth in anger. Chapter 25:01 Doing a Good Deed Every Day, 3. After saying all this nonsense, Ro-ji looked at Lung Ruoxue, who didn't seem to be impatient at all. After hesitating for a long time, she couldn't help but ask, Miss Lung, I have something to tell you. Seeing Ro-ji hesitating, Lung Ruoxue smiled and said, You're asking me about my man's identity, right? Lung Ruoxue's straightforwardness made Ro-ji feel embarrassed for her own thoughts. The reason why she wanted to chat with Lung Ruoxue alone was because she felt that it was easier for women to get along with each other. More importantly, women were the most soft-hearted. You know him? Lung Ruoxue asked with a faint smile. Not really. I've only seen my lord from afar once. Moreover, the person beside you looks slightly different from my lord. However, as your subordinate, I know my lord's aura. Ro-ji replied honestly. Since Lung Ruoxue was willing to ask this, she knew that her guess was almost right. This fact made her feel ecstatic. You're the demon's subordinate? Ro-ji's identity surprised Lung Ruoxue. Yes. I used to be a guard of the city lord's mansion in Jiuhua City. However, something happened, so I came to the 9 capital city. Ro-ji avoided the important part and said, Since you're a guard of Jiuhua City, you should know my temper. What's your purpose in deliberately getting close to Shuer? Suddenly, a devilish cold voice came from the room. Ro-ji's delicate body trembled when she heard it. Then, a slight ripple appeared in the air of the room, and the tall figure of the evildoer appeared. Seeing this, Roji immediately knelt down and lowered her head. She said with respect, "Greetings, my lord. Answer my question." The evildoer ignored Roji's respect and snorted coldly. Seeing the man in front of her cause her blood chi to surge up with just a cold snort, Roji's fear of this evildoer deepened. Ruji didn't dare to hide anything and said the truth. "I befriend Miss Ling only because I want to confirm Master's identity. I don't have any ill intentions towards Miss Ling." Hearing this, the evil man's pitch-black eyes stared deeply at Roji, as if he wanted to see into the depths of her heart. Roji felt the evil man's eyes and didn't dare to move. However, her heart was beating so fast that it almost jumped out of her chest. This was his lord, an extremely powerful man. How could a promiscuous Piao Yao be worthy of such a man? Thinking about how Piao Yao coveted her master, Roji felt ashamed. However, she could foresee Piao Yao's tragic future, which also made her fearful mood instantly better. After a long time, only then did the demon restrain his massive aura. Why would a guard of Jiuyo City marry the lord of Judu City as a concubine? He asked. The guards of the Jiuyo City Lord's mansion were the elites of the 9 Nether prison. Even if one couldn't say that 100% of the guards were geniuses in meditation, there were at least 80% of them. Ruji couldn't have become a guard of the Jiuyo City Lord's mansion by relying on her face. However, Ruji had married the governor of a small city, and she had become his concubine. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. When did the guards of the City Lord's mansion in Jiuyo City have such a low status? It was a huge humiliation to the City Lord of Jiuyo City to let the guards of Jiuyo City be the concubines of a small city lord. "Master, this subordinate has a secret that is difficult to disclose." Hearing the demon's question, Roji really wanted to pour out all her grievances to her lord. However, she also knew that her lord wouldn't care about such a trivial matter. If she really told him, he would definitely think that she was a waste. With this thought, she didn't dare to say anything. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue walked to Ruji's side and gently helped her up. "Since your master has asked you, why don't you seize the opportunity? If you really suffer, we can help you." Lung Ruoxue had a pretty good impression of Ruji. She was also the first person she had made friends with since she came to the 9 Nether prison. Therefore, she didn't mind being a busybody. As the saying goes, do a good deed every day. Today, her kindness would be shown to Ruji. When Ruji heard Lung Ruoxue's words, she was moved to tears. How long had it been since an outsider, other than the 9 capital city lord, had shown such concern for her? Lung Ruoxue's words, compared to her fear of her master's might, made her feel closer to her. After that, Roji started to narrate her experience to Lung Ruoxue and the demon as if she had found a vent. It turned out that Ruji had become the concubine of the 9 capital city lord because she was guilty. However, she had been set up. The first culprit was naturally Piao Yao, and the other two were the city lords of Jiuhua City and Jiuming City. Thanks back then, Ruji had also accidentally caught a glimpse of Piao Yao and the 9 underworld city lords' sexual relationship. The two of them were afraid that the matter would be exposed and Piao Yao's reputation would be ruined, so they had joined forces to frame her for stealing the city lord's mansion's valuable items. At that time, in order to live, she admitted to the crime and was then sent to a remote small city like the 9 capital city. But even so, Piao Yao still refused to let her go. She didn't know what the other party's purpose was, but he actually forced her to marry the 9 capital city lord. Although Roji was a prideful woman, she was also a woman who knew what was good for her. She knew that in terms of power, she was no match for Piao Yao, so she had to compromise. After Roji had finished her story, Lung Ruoxue stared at her for a long time. When Roji was about to lose her cool, Lung Ruoxue said, "If I'm not wrong, one of the poisons in your body should have been planted by Piao Yao, right?" "Yes, you know there's more than one poison in my body?" Roji was shocked by Lung Ruoxue's words. "I didn't know at first, but after I heard about the characteristics of heartbreak, I found that you didn't act up from time to time like the others. This can only prove that there is more than one poison in your body, and that more than two kinds of poisons are mixed together, which just happens to play the role of fighting poison with poison. Therefore, your situation is the lightest among the other people. Lung Ruoxue explained with a smile. Have you been injured before? Lung Ruoxue asked again after a moment. Yes, you're right. After I was injured, my strength was greatly reduced, and I could only submit myself to the 9 capital city master and become his concubine. But fortunately, he was quite good to me. For so many years, if it wasn't for him protecting me, I'm afraid I would have died long ago. Roji heaved a long sigh and said with a grievance. Take it. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue didn't waste any time and handed Roji a small white jade bottle. Roji carefully opened it and sniffed. She immediately looked at Lung Ruoxue in surprise and asked, This is a healing pill? Yes. Go back and take the healing pill first, then recuperate. Come find me tomorrow, it'll help you detoxify. Lung Ruoxue said calmly. Miss Lang, I have no way to repay your kindness. From now on, Roji is willing to go through water and tread on fire for you, no matter what. Ruji was so excited that she knelt down in front of Lung Ruoxue. Get up. I don't like it when people kneel for no reason. Lung Ruoxue said seriously. Yes. Ruji quickly stood up to avoid angering Lung Ruoxue. At this moment, Ruji heard the demon's cold voice. Ruji, while we're in the 9 Nether prison, you'll be in charge of protecting Shui. This subordinate will do as you command. Roji replied happily. The fact that her lord was willing to entrust her with such an important task meant that everything was in the past. Now that she had Lung Ruoxue and her lord's legs, her future would be much better. When she thought of this, she finally relaxed her tensed mood for many years. The next day, Lung Ruoxue saw Ruji, who was extremely excited after her old illness was cured. Roji's strength was even greater after her injuries were healed. Lung Ruoxue was shocked to find out that Roji had the cultivation of an underworld supreme. Such strength was equivalent to a reverent god in the divinity. Miss Lang, thanks to your healing elixir, I actually advanced. I'm really grateful to you. Roji said with great excitement. The future Netherworld Empress healing pill was simply too effective. Not only had it healed her many years of internal injuries, it had also allowed her to advance in rank. She had no idea how she could repay Lung Ruoxue. Even if she were to go through fire and water for her, she felt that it would not be enough to express her gratitude towards Lung Ruoxue. The 9 capital city master, who was standing beside Ruji, was also very worried. So, Ruji's strength had surpassed his. What should he do in the future? In the past, he could still rely on the fact that he could protect Ruji and rightfully occupy Ruji. Now, her power was already Mingzu's. Why would she need his protection? If so, how could he still have the face to stay by Ruji's side? Although Ruji had said that she wouldn't despise him and that their relationship would be the same as before, his male chauvinist heart still didn't feel good. Lung Ruoxue, who was watching coldly from the side, saw the two people's completely different expressions and laughed in her heart. Then she whispered a few words to Ruji, who immediately glared fiercely at the 9 capital city lord. When the 9 capital city lord saw this, he immediately acted like a well-behaved little wife. Lung Ruoxue could not help but laugh out loud. However, in the face of Lung Ruoxue's teasing, the 9 capital city lord did not dare to have any thoughts of anger. He could only look at Lung Ruoxue fearfully and pitifully. He could not afford to offend this person. Chapter 2502, A Self-Aware Servant, 1. Why were women nowadays so powerful? The 9 capital city lord could not understand, but he could deeply feel that the status of men in the future would be even lower. Perhaps he should get used to it in advance. The 9 capital city lord quickly adjusted his mental state and continued to act weak as he looked at Lung Ruoxue pitifully. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue laughed even more happily. When she was done laughing, she deliberately took out a black pill and handed it to Ruji. Seeing that there was only one pill, Ruji felt a bit conflicted. Although she really wanted to beg the future Netherworld Empress to save her useless man, Ruji, who already felt like she owed her husband a lot, couldn't bring herself to do so. The 9 capital city lords saw through Roji's thoughts and hurriedly urged, "Ro, hurry up and eat. You'll be at ease after you've cured the poison." He was afraid that Ruji would make them unhappy because of this. After all, their lives were in their hands. Miss Lung, Roji really wanted to ask if she could give this pill to the 9 capital city lord. However, looking at Lung Ruox's beautiful eyes that were as clear as the moon, she couldn't bring herself to say such insatiable words. "You what? Hurry up and eat?" Lung Ruoxue urged with a smile. "Yes." Roji was helpless. She looked at the 9 capital city lord apologetically. It wasn't that she didn't care about the 9 capital city lord's life, but she really couldn't say it now. If the other party wanted to give her pills to someone else because of her, the consequences would be unimaginable if he got angry. With this apprehension, Roji could only bite the bullet and eat the black pill. She wanted to wait until she and the future Nether Empress were more familiar with each other, or after she had made a great contribution, she would ask for a reward. This was the only way now. After eating the pill and spitting out a mouthful of foul-smelling black blood, Roji's face became much rosier. When the 9 capital city lord saw this, his face immediately revealed a sincere smile. He excitedly pulled Roji into his arms and giggled. At this moment, he really didn't know what would happen to him. Lung Ruox's beautiful eyes sized up the two of them who were overexcited. When they had calmed down, they suddenly realized that Lung Ruoxue had another pill in her hand. However, this time, the pill was gray in color. The 9 capital city lord looked at the elixir in Lung Ruox's hand, his eyes emitting a green light of desire. This was for him? He didn't dare to think too much, and he didn't dare to snatch it. Ruji did the same. The two of them exchanged a glance and then pretended as if nothing had happened. However, their peeking eyes from time to time revealed their thoughts. Looking at the two of them who had suddenly become pretentious, Lung Ruoxue pursed her lips and chuckled. She then threw the pill in her hand to the 9 capital city lord and said, "Eat it." "Yes." The 9 capital city lord was so excited that he didn't know what to say. After he ate the pill, he clearly felt a warm current in his stomach. Not long after, his stomach started to hurt intensely. Then, the 9 capital city lord turned and ran, his face red. "City lord." Roji wanted to follow him out of worry, but she was also afraid that the future Nether Empress would blame her. After hesitating for a while, she pretended to be calm and waited. Lung Ruoxue saw the couple's pretentious expressions and laughed out loud. Ruji was at a loss. "Miss Lung, what are you laughing at?" After hesitating for a while, Roji couldn't help but ask. "I am laughing at you." He clearly wanted to beg me to save the 9 capital city lord, but he refused to open his mouth. Lung Ruoxue teased. I didn't tea. I just want to ask you to allow me to give him my antidote." Ruji immediately said in embarrassment. She couldn't be so ungrateful. After all, he didn't have any obligation to save her, let alone the 9 capital city lord. "So that's how it is. It's a good thing you didn't say it, because even if you did, I wouldn't have agreed." Lung Ruoxue said in all seriousness. Thanks. After hearing this, Roji revealed an expression of, as expected. However, she immediately heard Lung Ruoxue say, "Giving him your pill isn't saving him, but harming him." Roji's face changed dramatically, and her face blushed. Ooh, she had misunderstood again. No, that's not right. The future Nether Empress was deliberately making her misunderstand. After Ruji understood what was going on, she looked at Lung Ruoxue with a resentful gaze. Lung Ruoxue looked at Ruji's expression and felt playful. She stretched out a slender white finger and lifted Ruji's chin. She said with a perverted look, "Beauty, your little appearance really makes me feel sad." Was she being teased by the future Nether Empress? Finished. Would his lord blame her? After being teased, the first thought that came to Roji's mind was whether her lord, who was protective of his food, would treat her as an eyesore and get rid of her. If that was the case, wouldn't her treatment have been in vain? At this moment, the 9 capital city lord also returned. As soon as he returned to his room, he saw his being teased, but he didn't dare to say anything. But not long after, An angry voice reverberated in the 9 capital city lords' ears. Take your woman and get lost. Arg. Roa, let's go. The moment the 9 capital city lord heard this demonic sound, his face turned pale with fear. Then he grabbed Ruji from Lung Ruakshu's demonic grasp and ran out with her. It was as if there were evil ghosts chasing after them. Their movements were so fast that it was absolutely unbelievable. Not long after the two of them disappeared, Lung Ruashue fell into a strong embrace. The face of the owner of his arms darkened as he unhappily carried the restless little woman in his arms. He lowered his head and punished her. The 9 capital city lord and Ro Ji, who had run far away in a hurry, only stopped to catch their breath when they saw that they were safe. Suddenly, the 9 capital city lords seemed to have thought of something and exclaimed, "We're finished! I forgot to thank the future Netherworld Empress and His Highness. You don't have to thank me verbally. In the future, express it with your actions." Ruji, who already understood Lung Ruashue well, said after some thought, That's true. There's no sincerity in talking. However, I really didn't expect our future Netherworld Empress to be able to cure the poison. She's really amazing." The 9 capital city lord said with a face full of admiration. "You don't have to tell me that. The future Nether Empress is an alchemist." Ro Ji said with pride. "Ruji, this is all thanks to your wise leadership. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'd have already offended the future Netherworld Empress and Her Excellency. At that time, I'm afraid I won't even know how I died." The 9 capital city lord suddenly said with a face full of affection. It was as if his face was saying that he would listen to everything he said in the future. "It's good that you know. So, when it comes to the matters between the city lord's wife and the city lord, you must not make any mistakes. You must be determined to be on my side, understand?" Ro Ji worriedly urged. "Don't worry, I know what to do," the 9 capital city lord promised. Then, he hesitated for a long time with a conflicted expression, before he said with a desperate expression, "Ro, I have something to discuss with you." Chapter 2503, A Self-Aware Servant, 2. However, before he could finish his words, he was immediately interrupted by an angry Ruji. "What do you want to discuss with me? Else, do you have another woman? I'm warning you, if you dare to be disloyal to me, I'll kill you, so that you won't have the chance to touch a woman in this life." Ro Ji's words were so vicious that the 9 capital city lord broke out in a cold sweat. Although he had had a few women in the past, after Ro Ji appeared, those women had become decorations. In addition, Ro Ji was very strict with him, so he had no chance to have an affair. Even the city lord's wife didn't have many chances to see him in a year, let alone other women. However, at this moment, he had to explain what he wanted to say. Otherwise, if he was really wronged by Ruji, he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Dead Sea. After clearing his throat, the 9 capital city lord said with a serious face, "Ro, what I want to say has nothing to do with women. I want to talk about Cheng. No matter how useless he is, he's still my child. So, I want to, don't tell me you want to save him? I'm telling you he's dead for sure. The Lord won't let him go. Don't be stupid. It's not worth it to implicate your family for such a bastard. Moreover, this rascal even wanted to kill his own father. Why do you still care about the life and death of such an inhumane thing?" Before the city lord could finish his sentence, Ruji interrupted him again with a face full of disapproval. She almost cursed him in the street. "Ro, I know that the unfilial son's death is not to be regretted. I don't dare to ask the Lord to let him go. I just want to ask the Lord to leave his corpse intact. Do you think the Lord will agree?" The 9 capital city lord asked carefully. "I want tea. You don't understand the Lord, and the Lord has never been soft-hearted to his enemies. It's impossible for young Master Cheng to leave an intact corpse." Ro Ji said with certainty. In fact, she didn't say that it was impossible for young Master Cheng to have a good ending. If it was her, she would not have let that guy off easily either. AI. Since that's the case, I've tried my best. The 9 capital city lord sighed softly. "Yes, let's go back." Ro Ji didn't want to talk about this matter anymore. She immediately pulled the 9 capital city lord back to the city lord's mansion. At this moment, the city lords who were like ants in a hot pot in the courtyard of the city lord's mansion immediately surrounded the two of them when they saw them return. The city lord's eyes were fixed on Ruji. The 9 capital city lord was furious and shouted, "Damn it, what are you doing? Don't have any ideas about Ro." After the 9 capital city lord finished shouting, the other city lords suddenly felt embarrassed. "We're not thinking of getting Madame Ro. We just want to ask, what was that breakthrough yesterday? How did you suddenly advance?" A city lord embarrassedly voiced out their doubts. After hearing this, the 9 capital city lord looked at the other city lords for a long time before finally saying, "You want to know?" "Yes, yes." The city masters nodded like chickens pecking at rice. "I'm not telling you," the 9 capital city lord said in an extremely infuriating manner. After he finished speaking, he pulled Roji and directly returned to her room. The dumbfounded city masters stood in place for a long time without any reaction. In the next few days, the city lords would secretly observe the city lord and Ruji when they had nothing to do. Then, they would gather together and discuss their observations. In the end, they came to a conclusion. The city lord and Ruji were fine. The so-called fine naturally meant that their poison had been cured. Thanks. After coming to such a conclusion, the city lords immediately lost their calm. Because this result was too unexpected, so much so that they couldn't convince themselves to believe this conclusion. However, the truth didn't allow them to deny it. After secretly observing the other party for a few days, these city lords had no choice but to accept and understand this fact. They had really recovered. He was alive and kicking, and he was so full of energy every day. Unlike them, they had to suffer a few times a day, and their faces were getting worse and worse. But when they saw how refreshed and energetic he was, they were really envious, jealous, and hateful. After believing him, the city lords gathered together to discuss. In the end, they couldn't bear it anymore and blocked the 9 capital city lord in a corner. Looking at the unfriendly faces in front of him, the 9 capital city lord's heart trembled. He pointed at the city lords in front of him and said in a trembling voice, "You, what do you want? If you dare to touch a single hair on my head, I'm going to shout for help." After saying these words, the 9 capital city lord immediately looked like a good woman who had been taken away by a villain, and stared at the city lords in front of him with vigilance. He wouldn't be afraid if there was only one of them, but if the few of them attacked him together, he really wouldn't be a match. "Do someone save him?" The 9 capital city lord's imagination was running wild, and before he could finish, he saw the faces of the people opposite him turn black with anger. But in an instant, the originally aggressive city lords immediately hugged the 9 capital city lords' arms and legs without caring about their image and began to cry. "Woo! The 9 capital city lord! You have to help us, you can't just leave us in the lurch." "Woo! The 9 capital city lord! We're all comrades of war, howl, you can't just leave us to die." "9 capital city lord, if you don't care about us, we'll die in front of you, and you'll say that you're the one who abandoned us." "Right. That's right, just say that you abandoned us. If you really don't help us, well, make a declaration to the entire 9 nether prison that we have an affair." The few of them took turns threatening him. The 9 capital city lord was stunned as he listened, but when he came back to his senses, he was also furious. These guys are really not human. How could he threaten people like this? And he had an affair with them? In your dreams? Why don't you take a look at what these people are like? Did he really think that he was a pretty boy with soft skin and tender flesh? However, gossip was a fearful thing. The 9 capital city lord really didn't want to create a topic for the people in the 9 nether prison. Although he would gossip sometimes, he couldn't gossip about himself. Thinking of this, the 9 capital city lord was really a little afraid that they would go out and talk nonsense. As the saying goes, a barefooted person is not afraid of wearing shoes. One must know that these guys were people who had an incurable poison in their bodies. Why would they still care about the problem of reputation? But he cared. After struggling for a while, the 9 capital city lord was finally forced to compromise. However, when the 9 capital city lord told them the truth that the other city lords wanted to know, the other party was dumbfounded. Taking advantage of the other party's petrification, the 9 capital city lord quickly slipped away. After returning to Ruji's place, the 9 capital city lord reported to Ruji about what had just happened. It was Ruji's turn to have a black face. They threatened you, and you betrayed Miss Lung and his lord? Do you not want to live anymore? Ruji immediately pulled the 9 capital city lord's ear and said hatefully. Chapter 2504, A Self-Aware Servant, 3. Woo. I don't want to either. They're going to spread the word that they have an affair with me. The 9 capital city lord said with an aggrieved expression. What's wrong with saying that I have an affair with you? You're a man, what are you afraid of? Roji said angrily. I also want my reputation. The 9 capital city lord explained in a low voice. What kind of reputation do men need? Ruji said in a bad mood. After saying this, she immediately held the city lord's hand and rushed to the inn to report the situation to Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer. After Lung Ruoxue heard this, she looked at the 9 capital city lord with a smile that was not a smile. The demon scoffed coldly and said with a calm expression, So, my identity has been exposed? No, I didn't. I didn't dare to tell them that you're the lord. When the 9 capital city lord heard this, he quickly explained in a flattering manner. The cold sweat on his body was uncontrollably flowing more and more. The pressure that these 2 people gave him was really too great. But didn't you tell them that I'm someone they can't afford to offend? The demon's voice seemed to contain icicles, scaring the 9 capital city masters so much that he immediately cried out, Ooh, I don't want to say this either. They threaten me. If I don't tell them, they'll say that we have an affair. The 9 capital city lord's voice became softer and softer, and finally, his voice was so soft that it could barely be heard, and his head hung lower. At this moment, he suddenly heard the demon's angry roar. Since you're here, why don't you get the hell in? After the evildoer finished speaking, a black beam of light shot towards the door. With a bang, the solid door was broken into pieces. Then a few people rolled in. The few of them rolled in like balls and only stopped when they reached the demon's feet. Then, they knelt on the ground and said with trembling bodies, after eavesdropping for a while, they also knew the identity of the man in front of them. In the entire 9 Nether prison, there was only one person who dared to be called Lord. This fact made the city lords so nervous that they didn't know where to put their hands. This was especially so for 9 Mountain City Lord, who had once flirted with Lung Ruoxue in a very cheery manner. His head hung even lower, as if he wished he could bury himself in the dust. The other party's identity not only made him feel great pressure, but also made him want to die. If he committed suicide, would he die more easily? It should be better than falling into the hands of his lord, right? However, it seemed to be too late to think about this now. Because committing suicide in front of his lord, that was definitely asking for a beating. If he really did that, his family would also be in trouble. Therefore, he could only think about it. He would never dare to do it. The city masters knelt for a long time, but the evildoer did not say a word. The longer they knelt, the more terrified they became. Even the city masters of the 9 cities became nervous. After an unknown period of time, the demon finally opened his mouth. However, the first thing he said was to order the other party to think about how to die. When the city lords heard this, their faces turned even paler, and their bodies trembled even more violently. Why, Your Majesty, please leave this lowly one's corpse intact. After a city lord took the lead in expressing his stance, he wanted to leave a good impression on his lord. What about you guys? The demon's pitch-black eyes started to size up the other people. My lord, please let this lowly one die a quick death. The 9 Mountain City Lord made up his mind and shouted. Following that, the city lords all told him the way they wanted to die. After listening to her, the demon's black eyes turned towards Lung Ruoxue and he smiled. Swear, how do you want them to die? I like to make them wish they were dead. If they want to die, wouldn't it be too easy on them? Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. That's true. Death would be too easy on them. The demon agreed with a smile. Upon hearing this, the city lords' hearts immediately turned cold. Can't you even die if you want to? Then let the poison take effect now. They prayed with all their hearts. At this time, the evildoer could not be bothered to look at them. He raised his hand and a gust of wind blew past. A few tall men were thrown out of the window by him. The sound of objects falling to the ground caused cold sweat to form on Lung Ruox's forehead. She had recently discovered that evildoer liked to throw people out of the window. Although it was immoral to throw things around, he could not deny that it was quite convenient. With this thought in mind, Lung Ruoxue walked to the window out of curiosity. She saw that the city lords who had been thrown outside had already gotten up from the ground. Although they looked a little disheveled, they did not dare to move from their original positions. Seeing the pitiful looks on their faces, Lung Ruox's heart softened and she threw out a small white jade bottle, which happened to hit one of the city lords. Then, she closed the window with a bang and returned to her seat beside the evildoer. Why do we care if they live or die? The evildoer knew what Schwer had done. He pulled Lung Ruoxue into his arms and said unhappily, thanks. As soon as he thought about how those ants dared to covet his woman, he wanted to destroy them. However, Schwer clearly wanted to spare their lives. Don't you think we need a few servants? I haven't experienced the difference between the servants of the Netherworld prison and those in the divine realm. Furthermore, they are the city lords. Lung Ruoxue left. Their status is too low. How can they serve you? Why don't I get the city lords of the 10 major cities to be your servants? The evildoer was still petty and wanted to replace them. Who asked those guys to court death by flirting with his woman? They were lucky that he didn't kill them immediately. However, Lung Ruoxue didn't agree with him. She said earnestly, the status of the city lords of the 10 major cities is too high. I can't afford to use them. What if they give me a hard time? What should I do? They dare. As soon as he released his aura, Roji and the 9 capital city master, who didn't dare to make a sound, immediately turned pale. The blood in their bodies started to surge up again. The two of them held their breaths and subconsciously wanted to kneel down and worship him. Fortunately, the demon had retracted his aura at this time, so the two of them felt a little better. However, the two of them were still drenched in sweat, and their bodies trembled in fear. His lord's pressure was too terrifying. Even a new Mingzun like Roji couldn't handle it, let alone the city lord of 9 capital city who was weaker than her. When Ruji and the 9 capital city lord, who was trembling with fear, calmed down, they still couldn't help but want to kneel down because their legs were soft. Lung Ruoxue could only send them back to the city lord's residence. On the way back to the city lord's mansion, the two of them were dazed and at a loss. The next day, Roji received Lung Ruox's order and returned to the inn. However, before she could enter the inn, she was blocked by a few city lords who had been guarding the entrance. What are you guys trying to do? Roji's face turned black and her tone was extremely unfriendly. Nothing. Ruji, don't misunderstand, we just want to thank Miss Lung. However, we can't see her, so we want you to pass the message on to her. The 9 mountain city lords said with a fawning look. In fact, they didn't dare to enter the inn at all. No one could bear the anger of the Lord. It's nice to say, but you're the cowards who don't dare to enter. Roji rudely exposed 9 mountain city lords' words. However, he wasn't angry and just laughed foolishly. Ruji's current status wasn't the same as before. Besides, she was much stronger than them. They didn't dare to offend this great aunt. Seeing that the other party was just smiling foolishly, Roji, who could be persuaded but not forced, didn't want to make things difficult for him. She only nodded to show that she understood and walked around the obstacles in front of her, entering the inn. The reason why Lung Ruoxue had asked Roji to come over was because she wanted Roji to bring the group of them to the nearby cities for a tour. Roji was very happy to receive this mission. She immediately said that she would make them have a good time. On the way, Lung Ruoxue had not walked far before she noticed a few people following her. When she called them over, she asked with a speechless expression, "You've been detoxified, so why are you still following us?" They were already eye-catching enough to begin with, and it would be difficult for them not to attract attention with these slightly famous guys following behind them. When Nine Mountain City Lord heard this, he laughed shyly. "We just want to help you guys out on the way." This was because the Nine Capital City Lord had secretly told them that Leng Ruoxue wanted them to be her servants, but his lord was not willing to do so. So, in order to please Leng Ruoxue, and at the same time, for the sake of their own lives, they decided that they had to cling onto Leng Ruoxue's thick legs. Only then would his lord spare them. They were very clear about this. However, when Leng Ruoxue heard Nine Mountain City Lord's words, she frowned and said, "You all came out. If the Castellan of Jihua City comes, he won't be able to deal with it alone, so you'd better go back. It's more important to help the Nine Capital City Lord." Hearing this, the city lords were extremely reluctant. In the end, it was the Nine Mountain City Lord who said, "Then let them go back. They'll stay by Miss Leng's side to run an errand." As soon as he said this, he immediately offended the other city lords. They waved their fists in anger and punched Nine Mountain City Lord. In an instant, several tall men were fighting. The moment Leng Ruoxue saw this, she gave the others a look, and they immediately left amidst the chaos. It was only when Nine Mountain City Lord was beaten black and blue that the other city lords stopped. However, it was only then that they realized that Leng Ruoxue and the others had long disappeared. "Damn it, it's all your fault," one of the city lords roared. After he finished speaking, the other indignant city lords gave the unlucky Nine Mountain City Lord another beating. After venting their anger, the city lords went back to the Nine Capital City dejectedly. Chapter 2505. I Want to See the Lord. 1. After the city lords returned to the city lord's mansion, the Nine Capital City Lords saw that the few people in front of him were bruised and swollen, their clothes were untidy, and their heads hung low in dejection. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Trash like them wanted to stay by the side of his lord and the future Nether Empress? Why didn't he think about what they had done before? Of course, he didn't think his previous performance was good enough, but he had a good woman. Thinking of Roji, the Nine Capital City Lord's face revealed a tender side. When the other city lords saw his infatuated look, they couldn't help but complain, "Ruji isn't here. Don't go into heat. Otherwise, if Ruji finds out, you will suffer. You bastard! You're the one in heat. Your whole family is in heat." Upon hearing this, the Nine Capital City Lord immediately retorted. The city lords only snorted coldly in response, and then they all sat down on the chairs in the living room, looking up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Seeing their dead looks, the Nine Capital City Lord was a little mad and couldn't bear it anymore. He roared, "Fuck! Who are you guys trying to show off? All of you, be more spirited. I can't get my spirits up," one of the city lords said in a low voice. The others didn't say anything, but they all agreed with him. "AI. If his lord were to see you now, I'm afraid his impression of you would be even worse." Suddenly, the Nine Capital City Lord heaved a long sigh and helplessly said. These words made the city lords, who were like eggplants that had been beaten by frost, immediately perk up. Nine Mountain City Lord even specially asked, "What's the situation now? Are you spirited enough? Passable. It would be even better if there weren't any bruises on her face." After the Nine Capital City Lord sized up the other city lords, he said in a decent manner. When the city lords heard this, they immediately stood up and ran out. When they came back, the injuries on their faces were much lighter and their clothes had been changed. They looked much more energetic than before. Nodding his head in satisfaction, the Nine Capital City Lord then said in a serious tone, "Although Master and Miss Leng are not in the Nine Capital City, we still have something to prepare in advance." "You mean the incident with the Lord of Jihua City?" the Nine Mountain City Lord asked carefully. "Yes. We'd better stick to the same story in case the mayor of Jihua City asks and we have different answers," the Nine Capital City Lord said with a serious expression. "What's the point of having a uniform caliber? Wasn't it obvious what the mother and son had done? Can't you just tell me the truth?" Nine Mountain City Lord asked in confusion. "Of course I have to tell the truth about them, but I can't tell you about my lord." Master's identity must be kept a secret. The 9 capital city lord said with a troubled look. However, he was a little excited in his heart. If the lord of Jihua City offended his lord because of this, he would have a hard time in the future. Thinking of this, he was a little excited. Then let's not mention the lord's identity. Can't you just say that a few powerful gods took care of the mother and son and saved us? Another city lord said after some thought. If that's the case, the lord of Jihua City will blame us for it. The 9 capital city lord pretended to be worried. What are you afraid of? The lord will definitely help us. The city lord of 9 mountain cities said confidently. With his master as his backer, he had nothing to fear from the city lord of Jihua City. Are you sure? What if I say that the lord doesn't care about our lives? The 9 capital city lord did not know where the 9 mountain city lord's confidence came from, so he could only pour cold water on his head to wake him up. Thanks, what a brainless fool. Why didn't he think about his identity and what reason his lord had to help him? It's my honor to sacrifice my life for my lord. The 9 mountain city lord pondered for a moment before suddenly raising his aura. Yes, that's right. We're willing to die for our lord. The other city lords also agreed. At least you understand. Remember, as a part of the 9 nether prison, it is our duty to sacrifice for our lord. Don't think that our lord will save us. That is not something we can think of, understand? The 9 capital city lord said sternly. In fact, the reason why he said all this today was because Ruji had asked him to give them some advice, in case they didn't know their own identity and status. After all, in the 9 nether prison, their lord was the absolute ruler. If their lord wanted them dead, it would be their honor. It had to be said that the reason why the 9 capital city lord would think this way, in addition to his natural reverence for his lord, was largely due to Ruji's brainwashing. Ruji had told him more than once that he had to be loyal to his lord and that if necessary, he would even sacrifice his life for his lord. As a result, the demon had a loyal dog. In the next few days, the Castellan of Jiudu City and the others began to prepare for the arrival of the Castellan of Jihua City. First, they set up spies in the places where the Castellan of Jihua City would definitely pass by. This way, as long as the Castellan of Jihua City appeared, they would be the first to know. However, after waiting for half a month, they still didn't see the mayor of Jihua City, which confused the mayor of the 9 capital city and others. I wonder if the Jihua City Lord will come? In the living room of the City Lord Manor, the 9 Mountain City Lord, who was chatting with a few other city lords, suddenly asked, I don't think so. Unless he really doesn't care about his sister and nephew's life. Another city lord replied. But it's been so many days. If he wanted to come, he should have arrived long ago, right? It would have been better if he had come earlier, otherwise I would always be worried. The 9 Mountain City Lord said gloomily. The same. A city lord immediately agreed. Everyone calm down. I believe that the mayor of Jihua City will come. After all, this is related to the honor of our family. As the mayor of one of the top 10 main cities, his dignity can't be blasphemed by anyone. He has to come for the sake of the family. However, once he comes, our good days will come to an end. So, I suggest you enjoy the days when he's not here. The 9 capital city lord said earnestly. AI. That's right. Once the Jihua City Lord arrives, we'll be in trouble. After listening to the 9 capital city lords' words, the other city lords also sighed. However, it was just as the 9 capital city lord had said. Right now, they really had to be calm, otherwise, the pressure in their hearts would be too great. With this thought in mind, the mayor of 9 capital city and the others didn't wait for the mayor of Jihua City to come and question them. Instead, they did what they had to do. On a certain day, the 9 capital city lords were having a banquet with a few other city lords. Suddenly, the few of them who were drinking in high spirits suddenly felt their breathing stop. Their bodies suddenly became heavy. Then, they felt a huge pressure covering the sky above the city lord's mansion. The lord of Jihua City? The city lords were shocked. They had indeed come. However, they did not receive any news at all. Chapter 25:06, I want to see the Lord, too. Just as this thought crossed their minds, a few black-robed scouts were thrown in front of them. When the city lord saw them, they were extremely shocked. He had been discovered. No wonder. Although the appearance of the Lord of Jihua City was impressive, the other castellans didn't want to look too useless. They had to force their blood to rush out and sit up straight with difficulty. However, the difference in strength and their pale faces revealed their true strength. Ha! These little guys have a backbone, I like it. A man's carefree laughter entered the ears of the 9 capital city lords and the others. Then they felt the pressure on their bodies lighten by a lot. They were slightly relieved, but they still did not dare to let their guard down. As soon as he finished speaking, an extremely handsome man with a devilish charm appeared in front of the 9 capital city lord and the others. The 9 capital city lords and the others couldn't help but raise their heads, and their expressions changed drastically. Oh my God! Why was this ancestor here? The man in front of him wasn't the Lord of Jihua City, but he was an even more notorious demon. Of course, calling him a devil didn't mean that his hands were covered in blood, but rather his unique way of doing things. This man was Ming Zi, one of the city lords of 9 Pass City, one of the top 10 main cities. Ming Zi was too egoistic and did things his own way. He could do anything to the people he liked, but as long as there was a chance, he would become enemies with the people he didn't like, regardless of when and where, or even the overall situation. In short, his happiness was the most important. More importantly, it was said that he didn't get along with the castellan of Jihua City. However, these secrets were not for the castellan of a small city to know, so they couldn't be sure whether Ming Zi's visit was a good thing or a bad thing for them. Ming Zi looked at the expressions of the people in front of him and laughed. You know me, huh? The voice and smile of the Lord of Dark Swamp City have always been in our hearts. 9 Mountain City Lord said in a slightly nauseating manner. You guys think I'm dead? Hearing this, Ming Zi was not happy. No, I didn't. I mean, we don't know anyone else, but it's impossible that we don't know the Dark Swamp City Lord. The City Lord of 9 Mountain City saw that Ming Zi was a little unhappy and immediately explained. His forehead was covered in cold sweat from fear. This lord was not easy to serve. Ming Zi, when are you going to stop causing trouble? Suddenly, an angry voice interrupted, and then a black figure appeared in front of the mayor of Jihua City and the others. It was Ming Jian, the mayor of Jihua City. Am I causing trouble? Little sword. As if he had been wronged, Ming Zi looked at the Jihua City lord with resentment and said sadly. Get lost, don't look at me with that disgusting expression, you lady boy. Nether Sword was so disgusted by Ming Zi's gaze that he had goosebumps. He shook his body exaggeratedly and kept a safe distance from Ming Zi. Thanks, however, Ming Zi deliberately moved closer to him and even sniffed his head. Then he said seriously, You smell like a slut. Which woman's bed did you climb into? None of your business. Nether Sword's face turned red with anger and he couldn't help but roar. Unfortunately, Ming Zi didn't care at all. Instead, he warned him earnestly, Little Sword, I advise you to stay away from women. Be careful that you don't get infected with some dirty disease one day, and you'll be the one suffering. You should know that there are no alchemists in the 9 Nether prison. If you are really infected with some disease, you can only wait for death. You get lost. Nether Sword was so angry that he almost vomited blood. This damn guy, it's hard not to go against him for a day, right? The key was that he couldn't beat this guy, so every time he was angered by the other party, he could only secretly sulk. He was really afraid that one day he would be angered to death by the detestable Netherworld swamp. If I leave just because I told me to, I'd lose face. More importantly, I can't bear to leave you. You also know that my life is quite boring. Other than chatting with you often, I don't have any other fun, so you can't be so cruel as to take away my greatest fun. Ming Zi didn't care about Nether Sword's anger at all. His words made Nether Sword so angry that he vomited blood again. Damn it. So this guy was using her to relieve his boredom. Although he had long guessed that this was a possibility, hearing Ming Zi admit it personally made him feel quite uncomfortable. If he could, He really wanted to cut the smiling man in front of him into 8 pieces. Unfortunately, this could only become his greatest wish. Thinking of this, the nether sword became worried. Looking at the interaction between the two powerful figures in front of them, the 9 capital city lord and the others couldn't help but widen their eyes in surprise. This strange scene was really rare for them. The mayor of the 9 capital city knew the mayor of Jihua City better than the other castellans because of his close relationship with the latter. However, he swore that he had never seen the mayor of Jihua City so angry and helpless. The mayor of Jihua City also believed that the mayor of Jihua City was at his most sullen state. This scene was truly too rare. The 9 capital city lord and the others looked on with great interest, dumbfounded. Seeing that he was being watched, the mayor of Jihua City was furious. He couldn't help but vent his anger on the mayor of the 9 capital city and the others. Damn it, tell me clearly, what's going on with my sister and nephew? What happened to them? Nether Sword bellowed in rage, glaring at the city lords with his fiery eyes. What else could it be? Didn't the 9 capital city lords' letters say it clearly? Your younger sister plotted against her husband and your nephew tried to plot against her father, so they were taken care of. Before the 9 capital city lord and the others could answer, Mingzi interrupted them with a calm expression. When the city lords heard this, they nodded their heads. 9 mountain city lord even added, "They're going to kill us too. After all, we were appointed by Jiuyo City. If we are harmed, the mayor of Jihua City will have to explain it to Jiuyo City. Therefore, the former mayor's wife and her son not only want to harm us, but they also want to frame you, mayor of Jihua City." After hearing this, Ming Ziyi gave the 9 mountain city lord a look of admiration. However, Ming Jian roared with anger, "In that case, I have to thank you all for thinking so much about me? You don't have to thank me. As long as the Jihua City Lord doesn't blame us, we should help each other." The 9 mountain city lord said, pushing his luck. Well said, Ming Zi said in agreement. The nether sword was even more furious. He thought, good my ass. It turns out that the one who was taught a lesson was not your sister. At the thought of this, nether sword became furious again and roared, "No matter what, you shouldn't have let a few gods take care of our people from 9 nether prison. This is clearly a provocation from the divine realm to 9 nether prison. No, I must report this to Jiuyo City. We, the people of Jiuyo Nether Prison, cannot be bullied by the people of the divine world. Bullying our people in our territory, isn't this a slap to the face of the 9 nether prison?" Chapter 2507, I Want to See the Lord, 3. Nether Sword's face was filled with righteous indignation. He even elevated the matter of his sister being punished to the level of conflict between the two worlds. Hearing this, Mingzi rolled his eyes at him. The castellan of 9 capital city and the others also looked at the castellan of Jihua City with sympathy. They felt sorry for the Jihua City Lord. Although he seemed happy now, they wondered if he would still be so excited when he found out that it was their master and the others. They were looking forward to it. "Why aren't you guys saying anything?" Seeing that no one present had any reaction after he had finished speaking, let alone someone echoing his words, Nether Sword couldn't help but ask. "We don't know what to say. People like us can't get involved in this. Besides, we didn't ask those deities to attack the Lord of Jihua City. Madame and Qing'er wanted to harm them, so they attacked them." The 9 capital city lord explained helplessly. He had written all these things in the letter to the Jihua City Lord, but the Jihua City Lord was playing dumb. The 9 capital city lord was helpless. "They took action and even captured my sister and her son. Are you not going to stop them? We are all from the 9 nether prison. What reason do we have to let a few deities interfere in our business?" After hearing the words of the 9 capital city lord, Nether Sword roared with even more anger. "Can we stop them? At that time, we were all poisoned and didn't have the ability to fight against those deities." Another city lord couldn't help but ask, "Then let them take my sister and Qing'er?" 9 capital city lord, "You're too useless. You can't even protect your own wife and child." Nether Sword once again directed his anger at the 9 capital city lord. However, the 9 capital city lord was too lazy to pay attention to him and simply lowered his head in silence. Seeing the 9 capital city lord like this, Nether Sword was furious. He suddenly shouted, "Men! Arrest them!" A group of fierce-looking guards rushed in. The strength of these guards was naturally not comparable to the guards of the 9 capital city lord mansion. They were all brought here by Nether Sword. I say, little Jian Jian, what's the use of venting your anger on them? It's obvious that your sister and nephew have offended someone. Even if you arrest them, the other party won't return your sister and her son. Seeing this, Mingzi tried to stop him. They're too useless, letting a few gods show off in our netherworld prison's territory. If we don't punish them for their dereliction of duty, won't they be the disgrace of our netherworld prison? Nether Sword once again put a big hat on the heads of the 9 capital city lords. However, in response to his words, the 9 capital city lords were quite calm, because this was already within their expectations. In fact, the Lord of Jihua City's reaction was a lot less intense than what the mayor of Du City and the others had expected. They thought that the Lord of Jihua City would attack them without saying anything, but it seemed that he was still wary of someone. If they guessed correctly, it was the Lord of Dark Swamp City who had come to join in the fun. It seemed that they were quite lucky. With the City Lord of Dark Swamp City here, they should be able to keep their lives. At least, they wouldn't be killed by the furious Jihua City Lord. As long as their master and the others returned, their mission would be considered complete. With this thought, they felt much more relaxed. Ming Zi, who had been secretly observing them, saw that the 9 capital city lord and the others were obviously relieved. He couldn't help but secretly mutter in his heart. What was going on with these people? Other than the initial shock and panic when they first learned of their arrival, they had actually calmed down very quickly. This was too abnormal. Could it be that they had some kind of backing? With this thought in mind, Netherworld did not stop Netherworld Sword from capturing and imprisoning them. Seeing that Ming Zi didn't go against him, Nether Sword couldn't help but let out a long sigh. At this moment, he heard Ming Zi ask with a puzzled face, "I don't see you care much about this sister of yours usually. Why are you so angry about her today?" "Thanks, why do you care?" Nether Sword gritted his teeth and said, "I'm not caring. I'm just concerned about you and satisfying my thirst for knowledge." Ming Zi laughed evilly. "Take your thirst for knowledge and get out of my sight." Nether Sword couldn't take it anymore. "All right, I'll get lost, but don't you think of getting me back. Because I'm far away." After saying that, Ming Zi left while laughing wildly. Of course, before he left, he did not forget to visit the prison where the 9 capital city lord and the others were locked up. Suddenly seeing the troublesome Ming Zi in the cell, the 9 capital city lord and the others were nervous. This man had never played by the rules, so he had to be on guard. More importantly, they didn't know why Ming Zi was here. Looking at the city masters in the prison cell who looked as if they were facing a great enemy, Ming Zi laughed very happily. There was indeed something fishy. "Tell me, what identity do those gods have that you fear? Also, weren't you all poisoned? Looking at you now, you're alive and kicking, so don't you think you should give me an explanation?" Ming Zi smiled very affably. However, the 9 capital city lords felt a trace of coldness from the other party's words. This person was clearly a smiling tiger who ate people without spitting out their bones. The 9 capital city lords and the others looked at each other and tacitly shut their mouths. Seeing them like this, Ming Zi wasn't angry. Instead, he was even more certain of his guess. Those gods, were they brought back by Master? After a moment of silence, just when the 9 capital city lord and the others thought that Ming Zi was going to give up on the matter, Ming Zi suddenly asked. These words were like thunder to the 9 capital city masters. Oh my God! How did this person know? In an instant, the city lord of 9 capital city and the others stared at Ming Zi as if they had seen a ghost. Ming Zi saw their expressions and knew what was going on. However, he did not continue to ask and turned to leave the cell. After Ming Zi left, the 9 capital city lord and the others were still in a daze. When they finally regained their senses, they looked at each other and said in unison, "I didn't say anything." But then they immediately became worried again. Although they didn't say anything, their expressions betrayed them. What was the difference between this and trying to hide something? However, it didn't seem to be the time for them to be sad. The 9 capital city lord quickly remembered the important matter and sent a message to Ruji. When Ruji received the message from the 9 capital city lord, Lung Ruoxue and the others were having fun in the nearby cities. After hearing Ruji's report, Lung Ruoxue and the others didn't rush back. Instead, they continued to play with composure. But they weren't in a hurry. Someone was so anxious that he was about to get angry. Nether Sword had been waiting in the city lord's mansion for a long time, but he still didn't see the deity who had captured his sister and nephew. He was so frustrated that he was like a bomb that would explode at any moment. Chapter 2508. Are you willing to let me die? 1. He couldn't get anything out of the city lord of 9 capital and the others, and they all said they didn't know anything. What was more infuriating was that Ming Zi, who lived in the inn, came to the prison every day, saying that he had a heart-to-heart talk with the city lord of 9 capital and the others. Every time he wanted to use torture to interrogate those city lords, he would be obstructed by Ming Zi in all ways. Ming Jian hated Ming Zi to death, but the 9 capital city lord and the others were very grateful to him. After all, Ming Zi was also protecting them, so in just a few days, they had formed a friendship with Ming Zi like that of comrades. Didn't you get lost? Why do you still come back every day? After enduring for several days, Nether Sword finally couldn't take it anymore. One day, he blocked Ming Zi in the cell and questioned him angrily. I didn't come back to see you. Besides, I didn't take the initiative to appear in front of you. You were the one who took the initiative to approach me. When Ming Zi said this, he really felt as wronged as he could be. Nether Sword was infuriated by his words, but he couldn't do anything to Ming Zi. He could only glare at him. I say, little Jian Jian, you're one of the 10 great main cities after all. You can't just rely on your high position and power to bully these small city lords. This isn't right. Seeing that Nether Sword was at a loss for words, Ming Zi continued. I can't be bothered with you. Nether Sword said angrily. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Seeing that the Nether Sword was so easily dismissed by him, Ming Zi felt no sense of accomplishment. This guy was getting more and more angry. After Ming Zi left in anger, he turned to look at the 9 capital city lord and the others and asked, when are they coming back? I don't know. The 9 capital city lord didn't even need to think to know who he was asking about. Not knowing the exact time, Ming Zi also turned around and left. A few days later, Lung Ruoxue and the rest had a great time and finally returned to the 9 capital city. The news of their return was sent to the 9 capital city lord's mansion and Ming Zi's inn at the first moment. Lung Ruoxue and the rest had just returned to the inn and entered their rooms when they heard a knock on the door. Ruji went to open the door. When she saw the person standing outside, she was dumbfounded. Why was this guy here? The 9 capital city lord had not told him that this person had also come to the 9 capital city. However, wherever this person went, it would always be very lively. I want to see the lord. Seeing Ruji's dazed expression, Ming Zi impatiently said, come in. Ruji was hesitating to go in and report when she heard the voice of a demon coming from the room. Ruji made way for Ming Zi to walk in. As soon as he entered the room, Ming Zi saw the demon and knelt in front of him with joy. He said excitedly, my lord, you're finally back. When Ming Zi said this, his eyes were filled with tears and even his voice was a little choked. However, the demon frowned when he saw him. He couldn't figure out why this guy would appear here. Looking at the two's expressions, Lung Ruoxue laughed to herself. These two fellows, one was so excited to see his own superior that he was almost incoherent, but the other clearly did not like the other. What was going on? The fire of gossip in Lung Ruoxue's heart was suddenly burning. She was rather curious. At this moment, the demon also lazily said, what are you doing here? Come and see my lord. Ming Zi said matter-of-factly. Thanks me? You know him in the 9 capital city? The demon narrowed his eyes. I don't know, I just came here to try my luck. Mingzi was very honest. Then you're done trying your luck. You can get lost now. The demon said in an unpleasant tone. My lord, how can you treat me like this? I'm not leaving. I won't leave even if I die. After listening to the evildoer's words, Mingzi seemed to have changed into a different person. He changed his image of a devilish handsome man and instantly turned into an invincible baby. He hugged the evildoer's thigh tightly and cried. Everyone in the room was dumbfounded by this scene. What was going on? Everyone was at a loss. This man looked normal before, but in the blink of an eye he had overturned the noble and handsome temperament they had in their hearts. Everyone was disappointed. However, Lung Ruoxue found this scene extremely funny. The demon's expression, on the other hand, was extremely ugly. The demon wanted to shake off the hands that were holding his legs, but Mingzi was too tight. He couldn't break free. His face darkened even more. Let go! The demon gritted his teeth. His dark eyes were burning with flames of anger, as if he wanted to burn the other party into ashes. It was really too embarrassing, wasn't it? Was it too late to say that he didn't know this guy? The demon thought worriedly. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Mingzi's courage and shamelessness. Mingzi hugged the evildoer's leg and said shamelessly, I won't let go even if I die. After saying this, Mingzi's eyes were filled with tears, and his little face looked as if he had been wronged. Everyone covered their faces. They really couldn't take it. Ruji, who knew Mingzi, stayed far away to avoid being classified as the same as the city lord. I've long heard that the city lord of Dark Swamp City doesn't play by the rules and likes to do as he pleases. Today, he had finally witnessed it and widened his horizons. Ruji was sweating like a waterfall. Sometimes she even felt that wishes were beautiful, but reality was absolutely cruel. Although the legendary Dark Pool City Master was not very reliable, he was still pretty. He was also the #1 figure that all the women in the 9 nether prisons secretly fantasized about. If those women knew this side of the Dark Pool City Master, what would the women of 9 nether prison think? Thinking of this, she was suddenly filled with anticipation. However, she had heard of how terrifying the city lord of Dark Glade City was, so she only dared to think about it in her heart and did not have the courage to say it out loud. Then you can go to hell. After an unknown amount of time, he finally couldn't bear it anymore and said, when Mingzi heard this, tears immediately welled up in his eyes. He then choked and said, this subordinate does not dare to disobey master's orders. But master, can you bear to see me die? Hearing such shameless words, Uncle Long and the others couldn't take it anymore. Lung Ruoxue also sincerely felt that among the people she knew, those who liked to act coquettishly, cutely, and pitifully were simply too weak when compared to this person in front of her. This guy was the ancestor of playing the fool. I'm very willing to do so. The demon gritted his teeth and the fire in his black eyes burned even more fiercely. If it was not for Mingzi's thick skin, anyone else would have been roasted. Master, you're lying. It's wrong to lie. How could you bear to see me die? I'm so cute. Mingzi said in disbelief. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.